Okay, we're live.
Live. Good evening, everyone. It's the Irvington Planning Board meeting of June 7th, 2023. Let me introduce who is here for the village. It's Sarah Palermo. She's a gatekeeper on the Zoom attendees. There's Ed Marin, the building inspector, Doug Hahn, the village consultant engineer, Mary Ann Stessich, the village attorney, Lori Davidowitz on the board, Dan McGillicott on the board, Caesar Manfredi, the chairman on the board, Michael Smith, and Michael Bafuco. Sarah, do we have the minutes?
Yes,
Everybody was okay with them?
yes, they're ready for approval.
Any questions from the board on the minutes? The minutes of June 6th, no, of May 3rd. Any questions? Nope. We have a resolution, a motion to approve the May 3rd minutes of the planning board.
Motion to approve the May 3rd.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. The minutes are approved for May 3rd, 2023. Least we forget, yesterday was June 6th. And for those of you who never took history, that was when the Allies, the United States, Great Britain, and Canada landed at Normandy. And let's not forget that at least 2,500 US soldiers never left that beach. The agenda for this evening. Number 1, 21 Oak Street. Number 2, 7 Bertha Place. Number 3, Gray Rock Terrace. Number 4, 11 Stearns Ridge. Number 5, 25 North Broadway, Presbyterian Church. Number 6, 11 Dunham Place. Number 7, 67 Sycamore Lane. Number 8, 18 Hillcrest Terrace. Number 9, 4 Circle Drive. Number 10, 202 West Clinton Avenue. Number 11, 49 Field Terrace. And number 12, 34 Lewis Road. We'll start this evening with number 1, 2023-14, 21 Oak Street. I'm sure everybody noticed the smoke, and in spite of the smoke, we're all here in person. Even though the Yankees and the Philadelphia Phillies canceled their games. We have a consultant for 21 Oak.
Yes.
Hi.
Good evening, all. Douglas McClure for Robert Collins and Kelly Jones at 21 Oak Street. We received Doug's comments. I really don't know why my name keeps not showing up on the drawings, but I think I fixed it this time. There was no landscape comments attached to the package I got. Other than that, I think we're ready to move on to zoning board.
Last meeting, we asked for you to address view preservation, and could you show us how you may have done that?
Sure. Hold on one second. So these are 2 views of the property. One, which is the real concern. Look from the street behind looking west. You can see in the red, I have sketched out where the addition sits. This actually, the house that is directly behind me, this edge of the addition kind of lines up with the door of their garage. And so there's not really much effect for the views there. Also, that house, most of the major rooms face the other direction. They face east where their backyard is. Then from the east, looking east at the front of the house. The red lines show the addition, and you can see the tree. In both these pictures, the trees kind of screen the view anyway. There isn't really much of a view from these locations.
Okay. That was another question, the tree that you can see in the, behind the blue car. There was some need for tree protection. You took care of that.
Yes.
Okay, and Ed, I have a note here that says needed some adjustment to the coverage numbers.
All set.
Doug, you're all set with the coverage?
Yes. Oh, wrong, Doug.
Yes.
I was talking to the Zoom, Doug.
Oh, okay. Yes, I have revised all the coverage numbers.
Okay. Any questions from the board, Lori?
No questions.
I have none. Mike Smith,
No questions.
Mike Bufuka,
No questions.
Laura, Sarah, anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, Mary Ann, do we have a resolution for this evening?
Whereas in May 2023, Robert Collins and Kelly Jones applied for site development plan approval to remove a deck, construct an addition to the garage and construct a two-story addition to their house at 21 Oak Street, which lies in the View Preservation District. Proposed construction requires variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals for coverage, front yard setbacks for the garage and house, and side yard setback. And Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in a memorandum dated May 1st made a number of comments, most of which were addressed in a subsequent submission. And whereas Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape consultant, reviewed the plans and made several comments which were addressed to her satisfaction. Planning Board held a public hearing on the application on May 3rd and June 7th, 2023. Proposed improvements would not negatively impact the view of the Hudson River from neighboring properties. It's a type 2 action under SECR and therefore requires no environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Board grants the application for site development plan approval for the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled Collins Jones Residence prepared by McSee Architecture, and the sheets are detailed, and proposed additions and alterations 21 Oak Street prepared by Hudson Engineering and Consulting, subject to 1, receiving variances from the ZBA for coverage, front yard setbacks, and the side yard setback, and 2, complying with Han's June 5th, 2023 memorandum.
Thank you. Any questions on the resolution from the board?
No questions. No questions.
We have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. Passed. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Good job and good luck.
Thank you very much. I'll see you a little later on.
Okay, number 2. 2023, 7 Bertha Place. Sarah, what do they have to do? Raise their hand to get in?
Yes, but somebody did raise their hand.
Hello, good evening. Can everyone hear me? All right.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, great. Brandon Stewart here representing Michael Lewis Architects. I believe Danae Pieri is also with us, owner. There she is. Just to give you a quick summary of the project. This is our second appearance here. The project deals with 2 additions, one on the side of the house that's an addition to the existing sunroom, and another off the front of the house, which is a kitchen addition. The last meeting, it was brought to our attention a few things. One was that the additional paving we were proposing around the driveway, which we knew was in the buffer, we learned that was a that would be a no-go, and that in addition to that, the existing paving would also require legalization. So we've removed the proposed paving from the project. We also learned that the patio we're removing next to the driveway, it was previously undocumented, so that we're still removing that. But it's been removed from the coverage calculations. And we now understand that there will be an additional variance required to get the existing portion of paving in the Croton buffer legalized. So we provided additional photos trying to kind of depict what that portion of paving is in the buffer. The best image of it is probably this one, number 3 on the top right of the screen here. It's this little curved portion that juts out here. And we've tried to show different vantage points from the Croton Trail and from the property to show what the existing screening is of that portion of paving. And there is one sort of gap where you can see that portion of the driveway from the trail. And so in the site plan, you'll see that we've added a few plantings to that area to kind of close that visual gap. We also conducted this neighborhood coverage study that was requested. And we can commiserate with a lot of these properties around us that suffer from the same woes of having existing non-conforming coverage and also having structures within the buffer. And here's just the final analysis of that. And we our firms actually, we worked on 2 other projects on Bertha Place. They're on the other side of Bertha Place, granted, so they don't deal with the buffer, but both of them that we worked on were also existing non-conforming. So we know that it's a struggle in this neighborhood. So and this was just one other study of a previous survey that we had from '88 that showed a larger driveway, a significant portion of which was in the buffer. And now again, just this little curved portion is what we're seeking legalization for. And that's about it. We've updated the coverage calculations, and we saw the comments from Han and from Suzanne Nolan about swapping out one of our planting selections with something that's less deer friendly, which is a great suggestion. So we'll be happy to do that, and also to provide more information on the lighting cut for the exterior lighting fixtures, of which there are 2 just off the side of the sunroom here. So we know that moving forward, what we need to seek before the zoning board is a side setback variance for the portion of the kitchen addition that's in the side setback, an addition of coverage to the existing non-conforming coverage on the site, and also legalizing that portion of existing driveway. So that's the work cut out for us going forward here.
We also expressed an interest in removing the basketball pole and backboard.
Yeah, that's right. Let me go back to that photo. Whoops, here we go.
It's just to the left of the car.
Yep. Just want to get that photo up again. Yep. So yeah, we talked about that. We talked about the possibility of removing the coverage altogether that's within the buffer, and planting it and removing it along with the patio that we're removing over here. But it turns out that it's something that really charmed the owners about the house when they bought it. And they have 2 preteen daughters that you get a lot of use out of it. So our hope is that as part of the legalization for the paving, that we can also keep that in there and do what's required in terms of screening. And we think that the existing screening and the additional proposed screening that we're showing is more than enough to conceal that from the trail. But we're willing to do even more if we need to, because we had a lot of conversations about this with the owner. It's really an important part of their enjoyment of the property. So that's the owner's intention, and that's what we're here to help them do. And we saw, and going through this, that it's with these older properties, it's a struggle for a lot of properties to not have anything in the buffer. And we're hoping that with the topography and again, the existing and proposed plantings, that we can demonstrate that the basketball hoop and the paving are not detractors to users of the trail.
But before I move on to my next question, let me settle this and ask the board what they think. I'm okay with the pavement. The Croton buffer is not as restrictive as you pointed out as the Broadway buffer, because the Broadway buffer specifically talks about pavement, while the Croton buffer does not.
Correct.
So the pavement that's there, and given the 1988 issues with the blacktop, the way you presented,
Mhm.
I'm leaning towards okay with the pavement, but I'm not okay with the basketball hoop.
Mhm.
Croton aqueduct. Lori, let's just concentrate on
Okay,
the pavement and the basketball.
I'm totally in favor of the basketball hoop unless there are formal written complaints from noise. But I can't imagine why we would want to take the joy of the sport away from teams.
Dan?
Somehow, if you screen it, I would have no problem.
Right?
So I have two problems with it. One is with the basketball court at the moment. One is that it wasn't shown, I don't see that it was shown on the plans that were recently submitted. So when I looked at them, I didn't see it, therefore I assumed that it was being proposed to be removed. Now I'm being told that that's not the case. And so I have to think about it differently, because I also didn't see in what the plans submitted was to show the screening that was proposed for the basketball court. The third thing is, I understand and I'm okay with the paving because apparently it dates back to the late 80s, at least to the 88 drawing. I have no idea when the basketball court dates back to. And while I might agree with Lori that normally I would not want to take this away, I'm also cognizant of the fact that we, as a board, generally do not encourage incursions into the Croton Aqueduct buffer. So without showing me how you plan to screen it and showing me, when it was erected, I'm not prepared to move forward with it at this time.
Yeah, that's understandable. And
Excuse me,
Oh.
let's finish with the board comments first.
okay,
In addition to what Mike said, it's not, I just thought of it. It's not just the pole and the backboard. It's an activity. I mean, it's not just a structure. It's a structure that generates an activity in the buffer. Mike Bafuco.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was the sound that I struggle with more than the visuals. It's hard because I also wouldn't want to take that away, but there's also the precedent of saying just because something that wasn't legal is enjoyed by the residents, that we should let them have it. That could. Other people have that problem, right? So this wouldn't be the first time. So I think, yeah, I'm leaning towards no what's best.
Lori and Dan, given the fact that we didn't consider, well, at least I didn't, that it's not just a structure, it's an activity. As Mike Bafuco pointed out, a noisy activity in the buffer. You still have the same opinion?
I actually already thought about that. I run, walk, bike, and do many things on the aqueducts. I think the people who live on the aqueduct are more inclined to suffer the noise of dogs and people using that public space than the people who are walking past it. And it's not a basketball court. I don't see a full court. I don't see two hoops. I don't see lines. To me, it's like a very casual, activity. It doesn't, I don't see a full game happening there. But, and because of my personal use of the aqueduct, I can speak from like almost a daily you know, at different times of the day, weekends, weekday.
And
In light of what you said about sound and the basketball hoop being there, that's true. But I also think it might be challenging in reference to screening of basketball hoop, where it would look a little odd in light of the surrounding area.
yeah, and I don't want, it's not appropriate to set a precedent on putting a play area in the buffer. I mean, the slippery slope on what happens next to the buffer. Okay, go ahead. You're on.
Yeah, so yeah, these are all really useful comments. I don't live in Irvington. I've spent a lot of time in the Rivertown, so I can't claim to have a personal usage log of the trail like some of you may. But for me, it seems like the trail. I mean, it's a place of solitude and refuge and quiet for some people, but for others, as has been pointed out, it's for running and for walking your dog. And for me, the sound of two girls playing basketball in this neighborhood of family values seems like something that would actually enhance the experience. And again, it's right what you say, that it's not a full court. It's not there's not bleachers. It's not it's an informal hoop that two girls use. And I think just looking at what the study that we did, it seems like there's at least 2 swimming pools that are within the buffer, and entire structures and driveways and paving. And in some of these photos, we tried to show some of that as well. So it seems to us that a trampoline, other things that seem to be more what the code is trying to control for. And then to address the concern about it showing on our application materials, you're right. I guess it doesn't show on our site plan, but it does show on the new survey. It's clearly labeled as basketball hoop on the survey that we submitted initially. You wouldn't have seen that in our second submission because it was initially submitted, but it does show on there. And in terms of showing the screening that we propose, we thought that was labeled well in our site plan, but we're happy to show more detail on it, or in elevation if we need to. We could show a study of the topography, because again, I think that plays into it as well, that the trail is up here at the 101, 102 topo line, and the bottom of the basketball hoop at least is down here at 98.5. Obviously it sticks up, but again, I think if in looking at the existing screening, even before we add the proposed screening, it's a wall of plantings. We tried to also show different times of year. Some of these are from March, some of these are from December, to show how robust the plantings are there, the existing ones, to show that it's not visible currently from the buffer in terms of a visual thing. So
yeah, maybe I could just say something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, but you need to identify yourself, please.
I have a question for,
1 second, we have a board member with a question.
if the basketball hoop was on the side of the house, would it be in the Broadway buffer? No, correct, right, okay. So in terms of noise, if it was on the side of the house, it would have the same effect to the aqueduct, in my opinion. And the one other thing, which I assuming Cedar could possibly correct, I'd be surprised if the pool is actually in the Broadway, in the.
Well, I've been here since 2015, and I don't recall ever approving something like a pool.
Yeah.
In any buffer. In fact, we went through
We might have-
3 meetings before a pool was removed from the Broadway buffer. And that was only a matter of 6 inches, if I recall.
No, that was the broken one.
No, it was
Broadway.
Broadway.
Okay. I'll go with it.
Maybe that's an idea. Maybe Lori came on an idea, move the basket to the other side. Now, the idea of, there's a whole new section in the code about play sets, which I believe don't come to the planning board. And that's up to the trustees.
Except
And
buffers.
like I said, I don't recall that's 8 years being up here, most of which as chairman, approving anything like a basketball hole in the buffer. It's just a precedent that I don't want to deal with. Go ahead, Mike Smith.
So, if you could pull back up, the diagram that where you said that it showed the screening.
Uh-huh.
The semicircular screening. So that's where, I mean, that's the one that I focused on and didn't see any reference to a basketball pole. Believe me, I'm a player. I fully understand why you'd want the girls to be able to play it. For me, what I would be interested in, because I'm always interested in making sure we treat everyone fairly and we don't, and about precedents. If you wanted to make the argument that there are other there are other activities, quote unquote, like the trampoline that are incursions into the Croton Aqueduct buffer, then I'd appreciate hearing your comparisons, where else in the neighborhood that's taking place. And then I can judge that way. And perhaps there could be as we do in other instances, some illustration of how the basketball court would be shielded from the Croton Aqueduct itself. That's just for me.
Let me ask an opinion from council, Mary Ann. The trustees passed code to exempt play sets. Play equipment. There's a basketball pole.
I would think it's play equipment, but as I recall, there was an exception for in the buffer.
It still could be in the buffers.
It
Oh,
still
okay.
couldn't be in the buffer.
Okay. All right, so even the play set couldn't be in the buffer. So if someone went out and put the trampoline in the buffer, that was without approval.
I'm trying to find that section.
Anyway, we beat that up. There's three of us that firm against it. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, the resident. Identify yourself and speak, please.
Hi, my name is Danae Pieri, and I'm own 7 Bertha Place with my husband, Jim. So I guess, just trying to make sure I understand a little bit. I mean, our daughters both basketball is their #1 sport, and they make use of this pretty much every day. So this would be like not a small thing for those 2 little girls. But I guess just to understand from a noise, so if there is a concern around noise, I think, we would, if we didn't have this space, we would put the hoop on top of the garage, which is right there, which would not necessarily reduce any noise. And if the other concern is seeing it, they've done an amazing job of planting really tall trees and tall shrubs all along. And I think Brandon showed where there's a few more that could be added, but you can't visibly see it from walking by when you're on the aqueduct walking, you can't see it today. You have to really go around to kind of even where we're going to put some plantings. So I think I'm just in the spirit of, it was the 2 reasons why we bought this house was that one, there was a hoop there when we moved in. And it was a great place for the girls who love basketball to play basketball. So it was really one of 2 choices why we purchased this place. So I think just maybe like if there's certain things from a noise or a coverage perspective, I mean, I'd be happy to keep brainstorming and thinking about ways to get people comfortable with this. It is a really important piece of this house, and would be really it would be very hard to kind of talk to the girls about removing it. So I just say that.
And if I may just say one additional thing too, I think the biggest testament of what it's like, I think just a stroll along this section of the trail. I don't know if any board members have been able to do that recently, but to see how visible it is or isn't compared to other things. And I mean, you're right. There could be a study conducted of each and every intrusion in each and everybody's yard, and we didn't really want to engage in that and point out, well, they have a fence and they have a driveway and they have a pool. But I just the general principle being that this is very unobtrusive compared to other things that are more visually
But
visible.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
But you say that, but I don't know that
Children's-
until
Yeah.
it's presented.
Hold on
Yeah.
a second. You had a comment?
Brandon, please put up the landscape plan again.
Sure.
There are other locations you can put it.
So zoom in a little bit to the pull off parking area, basketball net area. Zoom in a little bit.
Yeah.
So put your cursor on, is that 26, 86? I can't see it right there.
98.
98.
Mhm.
Okay. Where the driveway hits the buffer line.
Other
Go, yeah, no, let's go down a little bit more, down a little bit more. The best, stop, no, go back up. When I tell you stop. Down 2 feet
Out of the buffer.
out of the buffer. If
Yep.
you were to put basketball net there,
Mhm.
you wouldn't need a permit and you wouldn't be violating any codes. So if you were to take the approval today with the basketball net removed, it could be relocated there, all hunky dory. I don't think, now zoom back out to show the basketball area you get to play. It's still big enough. You can still
Yeah.
put the court in there. I think it's enough of an area to,
Actually, have more on the baseline.
yeah, have more on the baseline.
Yeah.
It's also on the southwest
Yeah.
corner.
So I give that as a suggestion because I think we're fixated on a structure that
In
may have trouble at ZBA, may not get to ZBA for another month or two.
Mhm.
And it's unregulated if you don't put it in the buffer.
If you go to the turn in the driveway on the southwest corner. Right there.
You know,
If you're out of the buffer, plenty of existing driveway.
Yeah.
Caesar, if I could just clarify.
Go ahead, Mary Ann.
Yeah, the change was made a year ago about children's outdoor recreational apparatus, which says it can be essentially, the board was very liberal about anywhere on the lot, except, and there were 3 exceptions. And one is provided in the Croton Aqueduct buffer.
Okay,
3
Mhm.
exceptions, it couldn't be in wetlands and it couldn't be in the Croton Aqueduct buffer, so.
or any buffer, I would guess.
No.
Just the Croton buffer. Broadway buffer was okay?
Yep.
That's
Croton
interesting.
Aqueduct buffer.
So the trustees, by giving that exception only for the Croton, for these play sets, it's significant to me that they chose to overprotect the Croton Aqueduct over the 3 or 4 other buffers that are in the village.
Yeah.
so I offer my suggestion one more time.
And you have different locations. I think we're gonna move on because we had a question on view preservation and you didn't present anything yet on view preservation.
Yeah, we showed a note and in our elevations. Do you want me to show that to you?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to show here in our elevations, a general, you can see these elevations, right?
Yes,
The general approximate line of the tree canopy, this is looking from Bertha Place towards the Hudson River, and to show that the canopy of existing trees there is much taller than either of our additions that we're proposing. And here's that note there talking about the view preservation corridor. And then, yeah, and it's thanks, Ed, for the point about the relocation of the basketball hoop, and we might be open to that. We can put our heads together with the owner. I do feel like, though, it might be a letter of the law versus spirit of the law situation. It seems like moving the basketball hoop to one of those areas might make it more visible from the buffer, or from the trail because it wouldn't be as nestled in with the plantings. But we get it. We get it that it's a problem that it's in the buffer physically. So
It's the
relocating it.
physical location in the buffer. And
So let me, maybe I should make this clearer. Do you want approval tonight or you want to come back next?
well, I was gonna get to that. We happen to have a resolution to approve the whole thing. And the resolution includes take the basketball
Out of the buffer.
out of the buffer.
Okay.
Would you like the resolution tonight with the condition of taking the basketball out of the buffer?
Let's see. I'll let Danae make the final choice. We can either decide now, Danae, or we can put our heads together and resubmit. It's up to you. And it's hard to make a decision on the fly, but
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand what the options are.
Well, if we
and
don't do-
may I just
we don't do-
clarify if we get the approval tonight, go to zoning and then come back to the planning board one last time, or
Come back here and then go to maybe zoning board.
sorry, Ed, say that again.
Come back here before you go to zoning board.
Oh, we'd still come back. Right. Okay.
And you have summer months on the zoning board meetings.
But you don't come
Yeah,
back,
but if they get an approval now.
they don't, then they.
That's right. They could.
Oh,
they can
okay.
make-
Okay.
You can
So
make
so
June and the July zoning board meeting if you take an approval tonight.
yeah,
If you don't take approval tonight, you can't go to the zoning board probably till August.
of course.
Yeah,
Okay.
Or worst case September.
Right. Yeah. Right. So Danae, the choice is either accept their approval tonight contingent upon the removal of the basketball hoop. Or and then we would proceed on to zoning and we wouldn't need to come back to planning board. Or the option B would be to put our heads together and show more studies and maybe try to put more screening and make another argument for it and then we'd have come back to planning and then zoning. And since zoning doesn't meet certain months in the summer, it could push us back. So that's kind of what the stakes are.
Can I add another thought? You still need the zoning board approval for the.
Yeah, no matter
pavement.
what. No matter what, we
And-
need to go to zoning. Yeah, we know that.
And-
Yeah.
And I would suspect if I was sitting over there, that I would be more inclined to approve the pavement if the basketball hole wasn't there.
Yeah, good point.
And it's not just removal, though, you can replace it.
Someplace
outside
else.
of the buffer.
Relocated.
And given the, you know, the law around the buffer, I'm more inclined to say that, yes, it needs to be.
I do feel that way as well. It's explicitly stated in the law as explained by Marion. So even with landscaping, it wouldn't fly.
Yeah, children's apparatus, right?
We have a long night, Caesar.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Ed, there
Okay,
was a
then
question
I
about
guess
fixing-
we'll request approval.
Okay. You know, I had, the coverage numbers needed to be fixed. That's all set.
Everything was.
Okay. Any other comment from the board? Not on the hoop. We covered that. Anything else?
No comment.
Mike?
No comment.
Mike?
Nothing.
Anything from the public, Sarah?
Nobody is raising their hands and there are no comments in the chat.
All right, Mary Ann, do we have a resolution,
Yeah.
please?
Whereas in May 2023, Danae and James Pierre applied for site development plan approval to construct an addition to their house at 7 Bertha Place, along with expanding the driveway and removing a pergola and stone patio, and whereas the property lies in the View Preservation District, and whereas a portion of the property, including an existing driveway and basketball hoop, lies in the Old Croton Aqueduct buffer, and the proposed driveway expansion would further extend into the aqueduct buffer. And whereas at the request of the planning board, the proposed expansion of the driveway was removed from the aqueduct buffer. And whereas a portion of the existing driveway in the aqueduct buffer appears to be undocumented, therefore a variance from the zoning board of appeals is required. And was proposed construction requires variances for coverage and incursion into the side yard setback. Con Engineering reviewed the plans and in a memorandum dated May 1st made a number of comments, most of which were addressed in a subsequent submission. Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape consultant, reviewed the plans and made one comment, which was addressed in the subsequent submission. The planning board held a public hearing on May 3rd and June 7th. The proposed improvements would not negatively impact the view of the Hudson River from neighboring properties. It's a type 2 action under secret and therefore requires no environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval for the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled modifications to 7 Bertha Place prepared by Michael Lewis Architects, and the sheets are detailed, and proposed additions and alterations 7 Bertha Place prepared by Hudson Engineering. Again, the sheets are detailed, subject to 1, receiving variances from the ZBA for coverage, side yard setback, and incursion into the Old Croton Aqueduct buffer. 2, complying with Hans June 5th, 2023 memorandum, and 3, removing the basketball hoop from the old, removing the basketball hoop in the Old Croton Aqueduct buffer.
Great. Thank you.
Any questions on the resolution from the board? We have a motion for approval. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No opposed. Okay, thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you very much.
I'm fairly certain if you put your mind to it, you can put that hoop someplace else, other than the bus.
Right. Okay, thank you all very much.
I should add that Mike Smith plays basketball every Sunday. I played basketball all through high school and college. I know that is a desirable sport to do. And my father put a basketball hoop out in the street in front of us. And so the buffer is the buffer. Number 3, 2023-08, 3 Gray Rock Terrace.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
How's everybody doing this evening? This is James Krapp, representing myself and my wife and partner Anastasia Melchikova for our property at 3 Gray Rock Terrace. Hopefully keep this very short. We received our comments back from Han Engineering, clearing out any open items from them. There's a small comment that remains from Susan Nolan regarding our construction pathway and a potential tree being in the way that I'd like to rectify. But other than that, I believe all other comments have been addressed. I can share the location if we'd like to walk through that, if that's helpful. But that's the only open items that I know.
Site plan overview, okay?
Sure,
In case there's somebody listening that wasn't here the first time.
certainly. Sharing my screen right now.
Yeah.
So yes, this is our proposed site plan. Can you see this?
Let me have a question. Ed and Doug,
All set,
last comment was the site plan was incomplete last time.
all set now.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Kraft.
Yes, we presented all of our feedback from Hudson, which was the majority of open comments. And one of the comments made from Susan was that
We know you did all that. Just
oh,
tell us.
this
what
is the, well, this is the
tell us
area in question. So the construction path, which is right here in the lower right-hand corner of our property. It's contentious against this magnolia, but we know that we have space to get a bobcat through that area. So the construction path should not damage the magnolia. We have no desire to take it down in any way, shape or form. So
Providing
we hope to
root
protect.
tree protection.
That's correct. We've addressed all of Susan's comments as well, but that comment came up after Hudson's adjustments to their plan. But we have no intention of taking that down.
What is the root protection? Is it on the plans?
Yes, it is. It's on Hudson's plans now.
Okay,
It's a series of plywood and mulch over critical root zones where needed,
okay.
as well
Very
as
good.
protection. Yeah.
Okay. And you're just putting an extension on a house. That's what I was looking for you. to
That's
present.
correct. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's the addition here on the right-hand side of the house
Okay.
and removing a bunch of other stuff.
You have an elevation for that addition? Okay,
It's right here.
okay. All right. Drainage, Doug, they took care of that? That was a
Yes.
okay. Any questions from the board?
No questions.
None? Mike Smith?
No questions?
No questions.
Sarah, anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Thank you for the presentation. Mary Ann, do we have a resolution?
Whereas in March 2023, James Krapp and Anastasia Amichakova applied for self-development plan approval to construct an addition, deck and patio at the house at 3 Gray Rock Terrace. Proposed construction exceeded allowable coverage, and the planning board asked the applicant to reduce the coverage. And whereas the applicant submitted revised plans which reduced coverage somewhat but still required variances from the zoning board of appeals. And whereas on April 25th, the ZBA granted the applicant's variances for coverage and encroachment into the rear and side yard setback. And whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in memoranda dated February 27th and April 3rd, made a number of comments, all of which were addressed in subsequent submissions. Suzanne Nolan reviewed the plans and made a number of comments which were addressed in subsequent submissions. Planning board held a public hearing on the application on March 1st, April 4th, and June 7th. It's type 2 action under SECRA. Therefore, be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval for the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled GRT addition prepared by Studio Park. And the proposed additions and alterations, 3 Gray Rock Terrace prepared by Hudson Engineering, subject to. If the multi-stemmed magnolia in or near the construction access route is removed, it must be replaced by an understory tree of an 8 to 10 foot planting size.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ann. Any questions on the resolution as read? No questions. We have a motion to pass the resolution.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Okay, thank you very much, and
I appreciate it. Thank you. See you
pretty
soon.
good. Thank you. Next is number 4 on the hit parade. It'll be 2023-01. 11 Stearns Ridge.
Yeah, it's still there.
Let the record show Lori Davidowitz is recused on this. We're ready.
Yes,
Anytime
ready.
you are.
Good evening, everybody. I'm William Besharat. I'm representing the engineer, Jack Corral. I believe at the last meeting, we had a few items missing, and I just want to extend my apology to the board for not paying attention to details. We have gone back, visited all items, addressed everything, all comments that came from Han Engineering and from the village landscape architect. And we had received the comments.
The only thing we're interested in tonight is whether if you could show us your screening.
Yes, we did show the screening.
If you could show us where it is.
Trying to find the. Somehow it's not coming up. Sarah, can you help me bring the screen somehow? It's not coming up. I don't understand why.
I'm working on it.
Thanks.
Ed and Doug and Mary Ann, they've all reviewed the screening.
Yes,
And there is screening.
yes.
And Suzanne was happy with it.
Yeah, well, yeah, she did have one.
Well,
condition,
yeah, it's gonna
that's
be in the
rest.
resolution, yeah, the size. Sarah, is there anybody in the public raising their hand or? Sarah?
The homeowner is raising their hand to speak.
All right, but no one else. All right, no one else seems to be, the public does not seem to be interested in, and it's been reviewed by the building inspector, the village engineer, and the village landscape that you have screening. And we have a planned resolution to approve it with a condition on the size of the screening. So I don't think it's necessary unless, Sarah, you could magically make it work.
But yes.
It takes a second. Want to ask if there's any questions from the public while we're here?
I did.
Oh, waiting for
I
Sarah?
just
You
did.
did? Okay. The homeowner has his hand raised?
Yeah, we'll get to the homeowners as soon as we're. Yep.
There we go. Someone,
This over here is the new screening proposed onto the west side of the property.
personal development.
Stearns, okay, I see it.
Yeah, right there.
Okay,
To the left of the yellow block. There's a screening that was added.
okay. Okay, we're done. Any comment other than the owner? Suzanne? Suzanne, Sarah,
The homeowner doesn't have his hand raised anymore.
any comment from the board?
No comment.
No comment,
No comment?
No comment.
and there's still no public?
No.
Okay. Mary Ann, do we have a resolution for approval?
Whereas in January 2023, Alan Gershkovich applied for site development plan approval to construct a hot tub at his house at 11 Stearns Ridge. And whereas the proposed construction would exceed allowable coverage and requires a variance from the zoning board of appeals. And whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in memoranda dated January 3rd, February 27th, March 31st, and May 1st. Made a number of comments which were addressed in a subsequent submission. Where Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape consultant, reviewed the plans and made a number of comments which were addressed in a subsequent submission. Planning board held a public hearing on the application on January 4th, March 1st, May 1st, and June 7th. And it's a type 2 action, therefore requires no environmental review. Now therefore be resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval for the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled Lot 6 installation of hot tub prepared by John Carroll Jr. P.E. Subject to 1, receiving a variance for coverage from the ZBA, and 2, the screening plantings being 6 to 8 feet in height at the time of installation.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ann. Any questions on the resolution from the board?
No question.
None?
No questions?
No.
We have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed.
Just make sure you understand this.
Did you hear the condition in the resolution about the size?
Yes, we
of the-
did. Yes, we did.
All right, thank
And
you
we
very-
are okay with
Okay. Well, you didn't have a choice.
it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Number 5, 2023-15. That would be 25 North Broadway, the Irvington Presbyterian Church.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Okay. All right. I'm Steve Sudak from Stephen Tilley Architect in Dobbs Ferry. Representing the Irvington Presbyterian Church, specifically the Good Shepherd Early Childhood Center. And what would you like me to do? I can go through the plans. I can walk you through the photographs through the site. I can answer any questions.
Go to the site plan first.
All right.
It shows the pathway of the pathway of the path, yeah.
All right.
We have an idea of the other gentleman on the Zoom.
Who's that guy?
I'm Steve Tilley, the architect of record.
Thank you.
The other Steve. Right.
I never have that trouble confusing somebody else.
Oh, this is what I got into last time. I'm having an issue with privacy here. Hold on a second. I don't know why I just can't share my screen. Hold on a minute. It's always something. Yeah, I'm having a sharing issue here. Wait a minute.
Steve, I can share my screen.
All right, that would be good. Sorry about that. Ah, perfect. Okay. Almost perfect. There it is.
Hey.
All right. Oh, and my cursor works. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to do dueling cursors. Okay. So this is probably the best overall to look at here. Existing conditions on this side and the new on this side. This is at the extreme south west corner of the site. There is a existing parking lot, and our situation begins here. Currently, there's just a slope and covered with wood chips that brings you down to a toddler play area here, which is fenced in, and then a larger semi-fenced in adolescent play area. The school is replacing the equipment in each of these two areas, and the desire is to get an accessible path that will take you from this parking area and give you access to both of these play areas and then down to the lower portion of the site. So what we wanted to achieve, number one, was not
Excuse
to
me, your cursor is not pointing to the pathway. I mean, I can see the pathway. There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. All right. I think that's you drifting around there, Steve, right?
Yeah, that's my cursor.
All right.
I'll try to follow you.
I'm going to chase you off the screen. Get off, get off. Okay, I'm down here in the parking lot.
Right.
This is my path coming north and bending away to the west. This segment right here, where we come close to trees, we've made a boardwalk, low boardwalk, to keep the path out of tree roots. And then we resume again with a gravel path that runs along until it reaches this elevation, coplanar with this elevation, giving access into here. It then continues down. It's only about a foot or a foot and a half of drop, where it meets a restored or improved asphalt path. When I say improved, that's because existing right now is a huge glom of asphalt and broken bricks and so forth in this zone. We're just making it into a nice, neat 5 foot wide uniform path that leads to these other asphalt paths, which we're also going to improve. So that the arcs that we created here, the distances that we've got, these linear, these horizontal distances are a consequence of negotiating that slope at a 1 in 10 pitch rather than a 1 in 12 to preclude handrails, which would get involved with complexities with footings and so forth. We wanted to do this as benignly as possible. This is, in my mind, construed to be more like a woodland path that runs through and gets you access to both playground areas and then down to this lower path.
Steve, you want me to move to another down the sheet or?
I just, if there's more to, do you want to see? Yeah, go ahead. I mean, you can move to the next, you can move over sideways and just see
I
the.
think we got the general picture.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask the board if they have any questions. Oh, I do have a question. It's in the historic district. Mary Ann, is there anything we need to do beyond what we're doing?
No.
Okay. And that we saw your presentation, Steve. I can say Steve and cover both bases.
Right.
It's quite extensive about the historic district. Let's just thank you. Any questions, Lori?
Is this, are the paths gonna be handicap accessible? And is that, I don't know if there's. Are the paths gonna be handicap accessible, and is that, given that you're a church and a school, is that something that you have to do?
The paths are going to be accessible, and they're made of a consolidated sort of crushed stone imbibed with a polymer. The code talks about that you need just have a resilient surface. It's not just for wheelchairs; it's for people that with ambulatory issues and so forth. But these details came from actually the National Park Service for their trails that are accessible. And yes, so they do need it. I said in my narrative that I wrote for you that the school is just striving for inclusion in terms of being able to accommodate children with various disabilities. What I know is that they were obligated to replace the equipment because they were evaluated. You need to have, you need to have acceptable equipment and so forth. And they were not up to speed on that. So they did need to do that. The amenity of having the accessibility is just that. It's an amenity.
Okay, thank you.
Ed, you're okay on disability access?
Yeah, I don't think it's an amenity. I think it's a requirement.
Okay. But they're okay with it.
But they're okay.
And
No questions.
I have no questions, but just to comment, thank you for the boardwalk to save the root protection for those trees. Other than that, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mike's it.
So I understand that the path at one end is from the building. Where does the path end to let you out? What does it let you out?
At the northwest corner of the, I'm sorry, at the southwest corner of the site, there's a parking area. And that was just, the only other way down is through the narrow path in the middle of the site there, sort of the one that's at the far right east extent of our work area. That's a steep path coming down. So you can drive now into the site all the way to the back and have your access down there. It then terminates down at the base. It terminates currently basically at the backyard elevation. It's imperfect in that they need to still if they're going to fully get full accessibility into the building, I mean, you can come in the front door accessibly through the paths near the front, but down in the back, there's an areaway. It's about 1.5 feet, 2 feet down. So that, believe it or not, is another committee at the church that is working on that idea of bringing down, it's a little to the left, Steve, way over on the back there, the back of the church. That's where the path ends now. So we are connecting down, we're back into the play yard in the back, but we're not all the way into the building, but you can get to the building by coming through the parking lots and so forth. So that's where, yeah, currently the door out is over there. But,
Okay, thank you.
but the intent was to get to that parking area. It makes basically the entire site accessible. It's the missing link. So,
Yeah, but the church is making a significant investment in accessibility and in that boardwalk section that's protecting the tree, so.
right.
Mike LaFuco.
No questions.
And one other thought on the boardwalk. If Ed, you pointed out, it does have a curb, so a wheelchair wouldn't roll off it.
It's a requirement of the.
It has a curb, yes. That's in the details on the second to last sheet, I think. Yeah, I have some details on that. And again, they're out of the Forest Service, standard details for that kind of thing. It's absolutely that. I'll say furthermore that that's going to be most likely the most expensive segment of this. And if you really zoom in close, you'll see that we're really trying to avoid one tree with the roots of one tree essentially right at the apex of that curve. We know already that there is opportunity to reduce by maybe 5 feet on each end the length of that and still not be in the tree root zone. I mean, I gave a pretty generous segment of boardwalk there. So.
Okay, thank you. And I think Susan Nolan added, we need root protection during construction.
I have everything. I have a lot of documentation throughout the drawings about tree protection, root protection, stage soil erosion.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
okay.
Mary Ann, you have a resolution? Oh, any other questions on this? Anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Nothing else from the board? Mary Ann, you have a resolution?
Whereas in June 2023, the Irvington Presbyterian Church applied for site development plan approval to replace existing playground equipment in 2 existing playground areas, to create a new ADA compliant route from the southwest parking area to both playground areas and existing pathways at the lower level of the site, and to reduce and improve portions of the existing asphalt paths at their property at 25 North Broadway, and was proposed construction will exceed allowable coverage and therefore requires a variance from the zoning board of appeals, and was the property lies in the view preservation district, but proposed construction would not impact the view of the Hudson River from neighboring properties. Whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in a memorandum dated June 5th made several minor comments. Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape consultant, reviewed the plans and made 2 comments about modifying the tree protection notes. Planning board held a public hearing on the application on June 7th. It's type 2 action under secret and requires no environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval for the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled New Playground at Irvington Presbyterian Church, prepared by Stephen Tilley, architect. Sheets are detailed. Subject to 1, receiving a coverage variance from the ZBA, 2, complying with the items in Han's June 5th, 2023 memorandum, and 3, complying with the items in Nolan's June 5th, 2023 memorandum.
Okay, thank you. Any
Thank
questions
you.
on the resolution? Any questions on the resolution? We have a motion.
Motion to accept.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much and
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
Presentation looking really good.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, the next is number 6. 2023-12, 11 Dunham Place.
Hello again. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Great. Hi, James Krapp, representing Erica and Jared Maltz for 11 Dunham Place. This was before you briefly, before 2 meetings ago. We've been working with Han's response and with the building department to reconcile the open items. And I think we have a pathway to get there. We don't necessarily believe we're going to get there tonight, but I'd like to present what we have advanced a little bit so that we can have a brief conversation on it. Let me share my screen. It's loading. Can you see photos, site plan or topography? You guys can see it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is a property.
There's 2 versions that we can see it. We can see it, but it's hard to make anything out on it. because
Okay,
of the
yeah,
sun.
no, I will zoom in. So just for frame of reference, this is off Harriman, down along Barney Brook in the 100-year floodplain, which we have acknowledged and understand. We've brought forth our coverage informations and other things that are more to be looked at a little bit later. We know that we are in a AE zone on the Barney Brook area, which you can see here. We've established that our flood elevation based upon local firm maps is 242. Now, that being said, the firm maps are not super detailed, and some of the work that's been done by Han and the building department over the years gets even more detailed than what we see from FEMA. So presently what we've presented is that the property itself, and let me get to the next page. So the site plan that you see here is proposed for a portion of additional parking in this area here, which is to the south west, and a portion of addition off the rear of the structure. It's a single story structure right now. We're proposing to make it 2-story in the rear. Now, since everything is in the floodplain, we need to maintain being above the floodplain. So those things are not to displace any water courses or change the flow of any water. It's been brought to our attention in more detail and explanation in meeting with Ed at the building department what needs to be done to resolve this, but we're closer than we were last time. So just for frame of reference, this is the existing structure that you see here. We're presently proposing to take the existing, what is existing habitable space and make it a garage. And subsequently add an addition on the rear. That addition presently is proposed, which you can see here. So it's a L-shaped site deep within the lot, so it's kind of awkward as to what's considered the front of the house. But FEMA calls the floodplain right now at 242. That 242 is essentially 3 feet from our finished floor. So presently we're close to compliance being above that. Now, that being said, the 242 floodplain is somewhat nebulous from FEMA. So we're going to resolve that in more detail and look at what the final heights might be. We brought forth all of Hudson's information related to the property as well, which wasn't in our initial application as we were waiting for feedback from them. And what you can see in their application is, oops, that is another project. What you can see in the application, which kind of clearly waylays how this sits within the property. So what you see here, what is white is essentially the 242 elevation, which is floodplain height. And then subsequently yellow is 1 step down, red is 1 step down from that as it proceeds back into Barney Brook in the stream. So we acknowledge that we're in that area, but we are somewhat higher right now. Now, that being said, we haven't resolved all of those items, but we are addressing them. So presently, that's the proposal that's in place. And we're addressing that as well as the coverage issues related to that. We are slightly over on coverage, but what you will find once we get through more details and resolve floodplain issues, you'll see that we're in keeping with the neighborhood and all the other items that are around. We're not necessarily requesting anything egregious size-wise, but the bigger issue to contend with is getting outside of the floodplain. So I didn't really get an opportunity to speak to that in the last meeting, so I just wanted to address those items and look forward to your initial comments, knowing that we still have some work to do.
Well, bring up the map that you showed, the yellow and the white. No, not that one, the site
Yep.
plan.
This one.
Now, if you compare that to the FEMA map, it doesn't have a white area. It's all, the whole property is in the floodplain, which would preclude building your extension in the mapped floodplain.
That's correct. And what we're proposing is that that addition would be built above it, free from the
When you say above it, what do you mean?
a foot clear of the height requirements so that any
On-
bit of that structure is
On stilts.
freestanding. Would either be on stilts or on breakaway panels on the sides. That's what we need to really reconcile is the final height. As Ed brought to my attention, you know, the 242 is not super descript in the firm map. And very quickly on the other side of the property, it turns into a height of 243, which is one reason why he made the comment and Han made the comment to get a determination from FEMA based upon the site survey. Our site survey is obviously more detailed than the GIS maps. And as we get more information, we can become clearer and clearer. But that's
Yeah,
where we're at now.
unfortunately, if it's mapped by FEMA, it's there, whether it's there or not. It's the map is you know, it
That's
speaks
correct.
for itself.
Yeah.
And
Yes. So what
unless
we're
it's there. The other question is the two-car parking lot in the front. That's a coverage issue and a retaining wall issue and
correct.
and I'm not in favor of looking at it. What are you going to do with that? Is that going to remain as part of your submission, or you're rethinking
Well,
that?
we are rethinking that. From a coverage issue, I clarified that with how it is interpreted, and we will update our coverage one way or another. I believe the bigger issue related to this, as was brought to my attention by Ed, is that it changes downflow stream from Barney Brook. So essentially, you know, from right to left on this drawing is moving down towards the Hudson River. So where its present location is causing some diversion issues. Now, it doesn't mean that this is technically considered a side yard, so we are allowed to put parking in that area. The front yard actually stops up here. That being said, the bigger issue is flow. So more than likely, we're going to present a new location and move this.
It's also in the floodplain. Now, you in your original presentation, which did not take into consideration that the entire property is in the floodplain, you accounted for the intrusion in the floodplain by compensating for it on the other side of the house, but that's not going to be the case. So you, in addition to the drainage interruption, those two parking spaces are in the floodplain without any compensation for why it's in the floodplain.
I believe that can be addressed if its height and elevation is changed and its potential elevation is moved above the 242, which presently right now that's why we were proposing retaining so that it was out of that plane. However, the bigger issue is the fact that it changes downward flow. So more than likely this has to move one way or another. And we're going to adjust that accordingly. So.
Okay. You know, there's also the aesthetic aspects of parking lot in the front yard. And I know technically it may not be a front yard, but it's a front yard.
Agreed. And we actually think pulling this off to the side is helpful. Presently, right now, desire from the client and other people, essentially the entirety of the front is a parking lot now. So we're hoping to pull it off to one side or another so that it looks better for everybody. It's
Keep in
tough.
mind that you have if you're going to create a new parking space, that is you still have to contain with the floodplain.
Yeah, we calculated for that, but didn't realize it was a flow issue. So when you look at Hudson's plan, they were displacing it with Coltex underneath it. However, that doesn't resolve the flow issue. So we're going to adjust that.
Ed, what's the timing on the various permits needed, the water permit, the floodplain permit?
So we had a discussion today. He's got to come back here with his alternate, with a plan that's more
Protected.
provable.
Yeah.
He's got to do his wetlands, his water course, and his floodplain applications.
Does he need to do that for the next meeting or?
He needs to do that before he can send it to the ZBA.
Okay,
And you have to look at it, and you're gonna have serious discussions about making sure that somehow the water, the flood, you can either do, like you said, breakaway foundation and raise it up, or you can do it on piers, as you discussed.
Mhm.
Those choices have to be presented to you. You have to see if it's adequate. Doug has to see if it's adequate. Then you have to see if they're impacting the wetlands, the water course, or the floodplain for the improvements.
is this more of a sequence to do the justification first and then come back with the permits, or do it all at once?
Well, he can't do justification without doing the permits, because the
So he
permits,
should come back with the permits next time.
he's got to come back with the permit
That's correct.
application
Okay,
and his proposal, and I think you have to look at all four actually combined.
Yep.
Before you send it to ZBA.
okay. Any questions from the board?
Not now.
Not at this, no
Questions? Mike, Smith,
not at this time.
Mike,
No questions.
Sarah, anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, so you have your assignment. It's a floodplain and it needs to be addressed. DEC takes these things very seriously.
Understood.
And the town has been inspected in the past and they're very rigorous about it. And you have the sequence of what you need to prep all the 3 permits, wetland, water course,
Wetlands, water course, floodplain.
floodplain, and how are you gonna not displace the water that's in the floodplain?
Understood.
Okay.
Mm.
Anything else? You have any questions for us?
Not at this time. Ed was very helpful to clarify items with me today, and we're working together to make this work.
I'm shocked.
Bottom on a good day.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Have a good evening.
7. 2023-19, 67 Sycamore Lane.
Everybody, can you hear and see me?
Yes, we got you.
Hi, I'm Aaron Ketchin. I'm the owner and applicant of 67 Sycamore Lane. I'm here with my engineer, Ed. My property, oh, you can't see my screen. Let me share my screen. Share screen. Desktop 1. There we go. All right. My property lies here on Sycamore Lane in between Dogwood and Sycamore. So I touch both of those roads. Right now, my backyard is very steep. This is the topographical survey. You can see that there's a huge downward slope here from 217 feet to 210 feet. This doesn't really do it justice, but this is a little bit of my backyard. We have a 3-year-old son. We moved in here a couple of years ago, and we'd really like to change the backyard a little bit so that he can play around with it right now. Right now, that steep slope is not particularly safe for him. So we're proposing to build a retaining wall and level off the area with fill. So I'll stop there, because beyond that, I don't know a whole lot about what I'm talking about, but Ed is here to represent the engineering plans.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Ed.
Okay, project, as Aaron had mentioned, the primary purpose of the project is to create a relatively level area behind his
I
backyard.
can't understand you, Ed.
I'm sorry, but we're having trouble understanding.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, but it was garbled.
All right, sorry. My mic is not working for some reason. I'll try to speak up a little louder and try to speak clearer. Proposal is to fill an area approximately 140 cubic yards of clean fill to create a level, relatively level backyard area for the catchings. Proposed to do this by bringing in fill from the existing driveway through the front of the property, around the side of the property, into the backyard. The equipment that the contractor is proposing to use is a small backhoe, and of course you have a regular loader for transport of the soil. We received the review letter from Han's office and from Susan Nolan. We think that all the items on the review memos are feasible. There's no smoking guns at this point, and we need to address those items. And at Han's office before, I know that they're good people and we've got a good rapport with them, so I think we'll be able to resolve these issues for the next meeting. Go ahead.
Well, we have a major issue with, I'm sure you didn't see it, but if you refer to the zoning code 224-72, letter C, paragraph 13, that every effort must be made to retain the natural topography of the site. Now, looking at the topos, the whole backyard is not steep. From 17 to 15, it's rather gradual. I stood up on Dogwood today, and it is a rather gradual slope for at least half of the backyard, and then it's about a third of the backyard is, as you said, a little steeper. So I think I know we have a problem with disturbing the natural topography, and I think alternatives, lesser fill opportunity to not even sure you need it. That area from 17 to 15 is not that much of a slope, at least from looking at it, and also it's a couple of feet. Maybe if you want to do something with that, and not, then you don't need a 6 foot retaining wall up against the property line. So you're going to need to rethink the whole fill of the whole backyard. I mean, 140 yards. And how do you get 140 yards through that access road? You come up and gotta make a left turn, and I don't know how the corner of the house is going to survive when a truck makes the right turn. And then you're going to have to bring fill on a retaining wall to level the road. So the trucks on the when they go through that, the northwest corner of the house, there's all rock there, and probably a 30 or 40% slope now, and then you're going to have to level that off with a retaining wall again up against the property line of the neighbor. So given the problem with totally disturbing the natural topography, which we're charged with preserving, and the lack of, in my opinion, inadequate access because of the obstacles in getting back there. I mean, 140 yards, if you use 10 yarders, that's 14 trucks, and considerably sized trucks. I just don't see it. Anyway, any other comments from the board?
Not right now.
Dan?
I'm in agreement with you, Caesar. It's very enormous.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
It's very enormous undertaking.
Mike Smith,
I agree, with everything that you said. The reason given in the application was for the placement, I think, of a play area, and perhaps you ought to think about where else on the property it can be.
Well, I think that's the problem, is that I basically live on a huge hill. There is nowhere else on my property. This is the most flat area of my property. So as it stands, you know, I can't let my toddler son run around my backyard.
the point is the whole backyard is not steep. It's just,
Yeah. I agree that the whole backyard is not steep, and I'm fine with, you know, reducing some of this fill. But
I think you got.
I'm sorry.
Michael Fulco, you have any comment?
I would say that if it is a play structure that we're concerned about, I don't think we probably need that much space, and leveling off of an area sufficient to stabilize the play space might be an alternative that's reasonable.
And would it, you mean the leveling of the whole backyard, or?
I'm saying this isn't probably necessary just to get a play structure.
Yeah,
Which is what you said the rationale was. Right?
Well, the rationale is the play. It's the play area, right? I mean, he's a child, so he's going to be running around and moving a lot. So it's not just like I can't just put a swing set there, because then you have a huge hill that you could fall down. So it's the safety of a play area for children, but not just a physical structure.
Because the physical structure is not really significant to why you're applying. It's just something else you'd be able to do.
Yeah, exactly. The point is that it's trying to create a safe environment for my son.
No, so you want to create a level backyard when there wasn't one there when you bought the house.
That is correct.
Most of Irvington doesn't have level backyards.
And my whole neighborhood has level backyards for the most part.
Right.
Does or doesn't?
They do. Sycamore and Dogwood have lots of level space.
Well, I get back to the disturbance of the natural topography. I think it doesn't have to be, in my mind, so extensive of a fill. Like I said, there's at least 2/3 of the on the east side is not as steep as the 1/3 west side. And perhaps if you could limit whatever you want to do to the gradual slope, maybe cut and fill, or it's just a massive amount of fill, and you're gonna wind up with a 6-foot wall facing your neighbor.
My neighbor is
Just don't see
okay with it, but if are you proposing that can you see my arrow?
I'm not proposing anything. I'm objecting to what you're doing, and if you want to get.
Are you objecting to, you're objecting to this? What I'm trying to figure out how we can get to a resolution here eventually. So this area, I understand you're saying probably don't need the fill there. We don't need to go to 217. But 215 to 210 is the more steep area. That would limit the wall by 2 feet. And would require less fill, and it would still create a fairly level backyard area. Is that more in line with what you're discussing?
When you present it, I'll take a look at it. Right now, what you got is too much fill, too much disturbance of the natural topography, which we're charged not to allow, according to code.
Can you help me understand how other stone retaining walls work then? Because I have many retaining walls on my property already. I assume that they went through planning board at some point.
The wall is not the issue. I mean, the issue is you're filling up, drastically changing the topography of the backyard. And the code clearly states that we shouldn't allow that. Mary Ann, you want to chime in on what the purpose of the code?
No, I mean, it's just, you're supposed to pretty much go with the topography. And one of the site plan standards is to, I think you read it, Caesar, I don't have language in front of me, is to pretty much follow the topography. I mean, there's times it has to be changed,
Right, I just don't see the hardship here to drastically change.
No, it's your call, right.
I think it'd be helpful if.
Mike Bufuco.
Not, okay. If you were able to find other properties that had done similar degrees of fill for similar reasons, that would be something interesting to look at for next time.
I'm happy to bring that. This property right here, I don't remember the number, but this property on Dogwood has this property right here has a massive retaining wall back here that they use to level their backyard for just that purpose.
So we're gonna definitely add, if you show us the wall, we'll also want to know why the wall was necessary, because it's not always just to fill and level the backyard.
Yeah, it wasn't for construction. It wasn't for their original construction. It was done after the fact, but yes.
I have a feeling that that house at 67 Dogwood has always had a problem because of the construction of the house above it. They didn't level the backyard by choice. It was that they were constantly getting the runoff and other problems created by the creation of the erection of the house on Dogwood.
We're very familiar with the house.
Caesar, if I could also point out that provision about the topography was added to the code in 2014.
Yeah.
So if it was done in 2013 or before, that provision wasn't in the code at the time. And it
Thank
was
you, ma'am.
added because there was a concern about the, not, it sounds so silly, but not respecting the topography, the natural topography.
That wall was also built to hold the house if it was falling down.
So you got two issues that, in my opinion, you got to scale back on the fill. It's just too much altering to the topography. And I just don't see the access the way you have it laid out.
We're very concerned about the access. We don't think the design that's there is adequate. And we think you're gonna do more damage to the yard and neighbor's property through that access. So you're gonna have to provide, I mean, the simple fact that the trucks aren't gonna be going up level and we'll have pitch to them kind of gives a little scare to us.
And then once in the backyard, they got to turn around and
No room
dump.
to turn around, there's no room to dump.
I
It's not one thing. There's a lot of trees that you have tree protection around, but the tree protection is not inadequate. Or impedes on the truck's maneuverability to turn around up there. So, I mean, we're gonna look at all that. Once you bring the project that the board is comfortable with, which might not be an import fill job. We're gonna have to start discussing access of equipment and materials. Because it's gotta be safe, it's gotta be safe for the neighbors, and it's gotta protect the trees.
again, such drastic change to the topography without a compelling reason other than we want to put level backyard. I don't see it. You need to scale back if you want to move forward. And come up with an access that works. In our opinion, works.
Did evaluate access off of Dogwood, which is north of the site. North of the,
It goes all the way to Dogwood. It looked like it when I was up there.
yeah, so we waited a number of scenarios, and so it's something we'll have to take another hard look at.
And there are a lot of other issues, but until we get through these,
I mean, we gave them the two primary ones, but once you get there, if a wall's involved, there's screening, there's all that other stuff.
there's coverage issues. You're way
Coverage
over.
issues, you're way over in coverage. So maybe a wall might not be the answer.
You may be precluded by the coverage created by the wall. So that's another issue about your wall. To be considered when you're scaling back. There's something close to 70% over. That's very high coverage and
That's unfortunately what we're starting with. So the wall itself would add to the coverage.
Well,
We were talking-
that
we
could
think
be
about-
that could be a starter right there, that your coverage is so far over. That if you're over 66%, 64%, and you go into 70, that's, maybe there's no starter right there. The non-starter, I mean.
Right.
you need to rethink this whole thing. The coverage is an issue. You may not get the ZBA variance, and we may not like the coverage at 70 or 75% over, whatever the final number is, because it needs to be verified. You're altering the topography to a great extent beyond what the code would like. And as much as when my daughter grew up, she wanted someplace to play, but if to go against the code, it's not really a compelling reason. So I'm sorry, it's not like the other house that it had to be because of flooding, or it had to be because you couldn't build a house without a wall. I'm sorry, it's just not working.
Okay, well,
Need to come back with a way scaled back on coverage, scale back on fill, and access.
maybe we could,
Access system that we can at least think that it works. I don't think that'll work at all.
okay, then we'll look at the access from Dogwood and maybe just moving this a little bit to the east, try to get some more balance of the kind of thing.
Okay, any other comment from the board? Sarah, anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, you may want to meet with Ed before when you develop whatever you're going to develop to change what you got. To meet with Ed before you come for the board.
Sorry, which Ed?
Ed Marin, the building inspector.
Ed Marin, okay. My engineer is also named Ed, so making sure.
Okay. Well, your engineer should meet with our engineer.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, you got a large workload ahead of you. If you want to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank Number 8. 2023-18 Hillside Terrace.
Let's see. Can't believe you didn't use this phrase. The house you bought, the house you thought you bought. That's not.
We have. You got what you bought.
That's not what you bought.
And Hoffman had a wall
That's
there.
not what you thought. It's
Yeah,
not
got what you bought, not just
bought.
banana all over again.
Hi, good evening, board members. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, my name is Christian Lanza. I'm here representing the office of Lawless and John Architects Engineers. I'm here for 18 Hillside Terrace. Paul and Hedy are the new owners of the property, and we're doing a small 384 square foot addition with the basement below. I want to show you a little bit of what we're doing here. Let me see if I can start sharing my screen for you guys. So ideally, this is the existing survey of the property. It's a 1929 Tudor. And what we're going to do is we're proposing to do an addition off the side here, which will increase the kitchen, provide them with a deck in the back, and then a front porch off the side. So basically off of a mudroom. The front of the house would look something like this. So we're trying to stay within the same architectural features of the house to look like it was always part of the house. From the side, the reason why this looks like this is we're maintaining the windows on the second floor. So here we have a nice low roof, cricket roof. So we're not disturbing any of the windows above. And then from the back, we have this deck that goes into this family room addition that we're doing. With this, once we did by the way, this morning we received the plan exam review from Han Engineering. We also received the comment from Village Landscape Architects, Ms. Suzanne. We will address them. Thank you for that. And that's pretty much what we're here to show. If you look at the house inside, this is the idea. This is the existing house right now. The kitchen is extremely small. The homeowners are moving here from their daughter is actually having a baby. They live not too far from this property. And we are trying to accommodate them and just give them a bigger space in terms of a family room, a powder room and a bathroom on the first floor, which we can see here, open to the deck in the back. I'm open to any questions if you guys are.
You have a note that you're adding a deck?
Yeah. you should.
Yes, on the back.
Okay. Well, add the coverage numbers and the FAR numbers need to be fixed.
Yeah, we need a little more detail. Give me a call tomorrow. The FAR numbers. They're good. You're good for the project, but you have to correct some of the coverage numbers, the FAR numbers. You can't subtract the whole garage and can't include the whole garage. So it balances out. And then we need a better breakdown with the coverage. We can go over that tomorrow. It's not a big difference. And then if you can do the heights, the proposed heights from the lowest to the highest point of the proposed, instead of the average grade, we don't do average grade in Irvington.
Okay.
We can get those done. And then the only thing, Caesar, is the coverage is quite large.
Yes.
I think your board should look at that.
And see if you can reduce it, and we need a neighborhood comparison as it can, so that this property is not the #1 over coverage property in the neighborhood. We'd like to see how it compares to other properties. That area up there is a tight area, so I would guess that you might be in the range of everybody else, but we don't know that until you do a comparison.
Okay,
You
I
understand?
understand. We can work on that.
You understand what I mean by a neighborhood comparison? You do a chart of other properties in the area with their coverage, compare it to your coverage. And hopefully
Okay.
you're not the #1 coverage. And I don't know if Susan Nolan's comments were the current stormwater system looks like it's going to kill a 12-inch and a 20-inch tree. If you can move the stormwater system, you may not be, but if you can't, that you're taking down a 12 and 20-inch tree, then it needs to be replacement trees someplace. If that's the case, if you can't move the stormwater system.
Yeah, we'll be very, very tight, only because of the setbacks. We have to stay away from the building a certain amount of feet and away from the property line. So it's gonna make it very, very difficult to relocate the the dry wells. But we can definitely provide planting elsewhere on the property. We have plenty of area.
I don't think the trees are in the footprint, but you're very close to the roots, and you knock out enough roots that the trees will eventually die.
Exactly. Okay, I understand.
Okay. So you need to, I would suggest you touch base with Susan Nolan. Doug, her comments are attached.
Yeah, they're attached.
Yes, we have.
You can contact me also if you wanted to go through some of these.
The drainage issue.
Yeah, the drainage or the other issues also, the scale. The floodplain, we'd like to see, it may not be, we'd like to see where it is. That'll depend whether the water course and water bodies, which one's actually required or not, so need to see where that is.
Okay, we can definitely show that.
Okay. Any questions from the board, Lori?
No.
No questions. Mike?
None of this, no questions at this time.
No question.
Sarah?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, by the way, I like the way it looks. You sort of incorporated the new section very well with the existing house.
Thank you. I actually put together a very quick sketch of what it would look like with the real image.
Yeah.
So we'll look at something like that.
But unfortunately, there's a lot of technical issues on the coverage and the trees. And we need to resolve them so that you can move forward with what looks like a nice project, but can't get done unless we cover these technical issues.
I understand. Thank you very much for the feedback.
Okay, we'll see you next time. And
Thank you.
meet with Ed and Doug to resolve.
Yes. Hey, do I give you a call tomorrow to set up an appointment?
I'm just thinking for tomorrow. I'll be here. I gotta change my schedule. Yeah, give me a call in the morning.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You know, that reminds me of a scene in Casablanca. The woman says, "I'll be there at 6 a.m," and the captain says, "That's fine. I'll be there at 10."
I'll be there at 8.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.
I'm contemplating taking a break. Stretch, because we got 1, 2, 3, 4 more to go. Let's come back in 5 minutes.
Which one is number 10?
Number 10 would be 202 West Clinton Avenue.
Okay, great.
Number 9 is the next one that we're going to do, Four Circle Drive, in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
At 3 minutes to 12, we will resume.
3 minutes to 9.
Yeah. No. Right.
Yeah, I
lowering
think
it now.
so too.
She's lowering it now.
What?
Oh, okay. Yes, she can lower it, so I can't hear you.
Excuse me, I was over there and it goes like
So,
that. So sort of.
I didn't want to get to though. It's Mr. Hoffman's house, the previous chairs. All easily identified.
Oh, it's Hoffman.
Yeah, he said that. Yeah,
Well, then they had all that stuff had to be.
but that wall was there.
You know, it was 2014.
What happened is in 2018. So he went.
you can
in
have
and
this,
wall
or-
Dug down like 12 feet. And had construction.
Yeah.
Oh, so,
It was a disaster.
but they never went before the plan.
I mean, we changed the gradient, changed a lot.
It's the whole draft.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why it has to be. I can't pause that.
There was so many houses we loved in Mason, but we opened the back.
Yeah.
and I was like, so you don't find them.
Right. If you want. What? The perfect house, wait for it. Right. Some sort of bill.
Well, I know one's old, then everybody else is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, because, but the second is so. I need to not for them. I better just. Really down.
I like, I see.
It's either heat's not on, it's not. Like, consistent, weekly meetings, like, I think. Yeah. What? No, I can't turn off things and then restart it, so this is all, this can all be heard. you want to have other conversations, you don't want to be heard. You don't have to listen.
Basically, when there were two.
You, because we kept making it, I push it back, we didn't even let the action.
That's somebody see, I want to go out there with a ruler. That's John.
So how are you feeling? Good?
Okay.
Yeah.
They had three stays in the hospital. That's
Oh, my God.
including surgery.
Yeah.
Getting better. Still got some pains. Get some pains. He says, well, you know, when we do, we go pump you up there.
Yeah.
And everything gets stretched out. The ligaments get stretched. And you're gonna feel it. Yeah. So everything.
This is better.
Cold, so you put your jacket on.
Well, thanks, Sarah.
I turned off the AC.
Oh, okay.
It was really, really hot when I first walked in.
Oh.
They don't allow me to see sometimes.
I was fine when I first walked in.
Yeah. No.
Oh, you were just outside, huh? Over there outside?
You can hear my teeth chattering. Very slow.
Yep.
We'll wait for Ed to come back. No, another minute.
See, now I wonder, when they first proposed it in the 80s, when they heard that bump out, whether they really, well, the best, that basketball.
Yeah, they pretty.
That's really loud. They said it was one of the. I already said it was, but I think it was recent. It looked pretty, yeah.
Mary Ann, thank you for looking up that, the new playground.
Yeah.
That was,
I mean, I didn't remember that. I thought it was all the buffers until I looked at it, but
that made the issue compelling.
yeah.
So I saw that, Rob is out for the season?
Okay.
Yeah.
And Judge is out for 10 days.
Yeah. Did you see the catch?
I was watching it live.
I mean, it was like.
And then the guy advanced because he was out of bounds.
I know, I don't understand that, you know.
I didn't get it. Anyway.
Okay, that's been.
Wait, you know, when Cheetah goes into the stands, right, in 2001.
Oh, right. I remember that.
He's out of bounds, he's out of the field of play, how come?
But it was discretion of the umpire that he could advance. A little crazy. All right, we're killing time discussing baseball, but we're back to the reality of the planning board issues. We're moving to did that number 9, 2023-17, 4 Circle Drive.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Broda. I'm the architect for the project. My clients, Lena and Josh Fleckner, are also here with us.
Chris, you're coming across a little garbled, so.
Ooh, is this any better?
Yeah, much better.
Okay, great. Hi, my name's Chris Broda. I'm the architect for the project. My clients, Lena and Josh Lechner, are also on viewing. If I may, I'm going to start sharing my screen and walk you through the project. It's a little bit unusual. Let me see, which one do I want to show us? My clients bought the house a couple of years ago. The previous owner had applied for, was built the renovations and the large addition to the house and had applied to the planning board for site plan approval, also obtained a variance for coverage issues. In their agreed to plan, they also submitted a fairly elaborate landscape plan. Why we're here is because the owners decided not to follow the plan that was approved by the planning board. This is my previous owner, the previous owners, not my clients. To not follow the approved plan and make a much larger driveway. And also never got around to doing the landscaping, and also added a couple of small retaining walls, which did not get included as part of the coverage. And so because we were already over the amount of allowed coverage and they got a variance for it, we're now in excess of that by 33 feet and change with these small retaining walls. So here on the screen, I have the approved site plan, which was the one that was approved by the planning board in 2016. Here you can see that they're on the curve here. This is the front entrance to the house. This was the approved driveway, and there was a large linden tree that was removed at the time of construction. I'm going to show you a 3D view now of what currently exists. So as you can see here, we have a much wider driveway. Here they took this driveway instead of straight across, they made a double entrance, double curb cut.
You did change the page.
Not up,
Oh, sorry, you don't see it?
no, just the original. There's the first thing you put up.
And by the large.
All
linden
right,
tree.
there you go. How about that? Can you
No.
see the 3D now?
Yeah,
Right
now we
now,
see it.
do,
There we go.
okay.
Okay. So here you can see that they extended this driveway, made a double curb cut. There's a retaining wall here that was on the plan, but it is longer. I'll show you that in a second. And then there are these two other small retaining walls that they created, which are railroad tie walls. The rest of the plan is as was planned with the deck and the addition and all of that. Here you can see the retaining walls. This wall here is a segmented stone wall, which is probably about a third again as long as was originally intended. And then along here under this tree, there's a natural stone small retaining wall. So I've counted all of those into the coverage. And so now we're at about 33 feet over the original coverage. So what I'll show you next is how we propose to make some changes here. What we're intending to do is to take that driveway and now reduce it in size so that we're going to take this section that was built and remove it entirely, go back to having just a single curb cut, leave these retaining walls as they are, and also leave these retaining walls over here that are the retaining walls made of railroad ties. This one's only about 18 inches at the deepest part. This is only about 24 inches. I can understand why they did these because the site slopes quite a bit here. And by leveling it out a bit, it made for a little bit of an easier sort of foundation planting area. Also, as part of our proposal is to change their somewhat more elaborate, extensively more elaborate landscaping plan, and for cost purposes, trying to cut it down. Our intent is to put some foundation plants here along the face of the house. These two red maples were not on the plan I submitted, but in response to the comments that I got back today, we will need to put some more trees in. So we're looking at the possibility of, a couple of ornamental trees here. But our intent is to try to make it be a little bit more pleasant with planting along the street front, trying to hide the house a bit. But my clients would also like to put this fence in order to fence off the backyard for their dog and their children. And that would be something we'd like to keep open. So that's really kind of the extent of why we're here, is we're trying to legalize what the previous owners promised to do and did not do, and then did something else instead. And we're trying to mitigate that. Anybody have any questions?
Well, you got Susan Nolan's comments, and she was talking about adding 2 canopy trees and 2 underbrush trees.
Yes, yes. So we're going to have to look at what's feasible there. By the way, she also mentioned that this tree here, which does no longer exist, that was something that was taken out by, either the current owners or the previous owners. And in reality, that tree was taken out by the village. That I'm gonna get rid of it because it really isn't there. So we do have, and this tree is actually not quite as robust looking as this one is. So it's possible we could put another tree here. That tree was removed by the village itself because it was in the right of way, and I think it was not doing so well. Ed, my clients say that you informed them that they did that.
Okay, I'm sure you can work with Susan Nolan about placement of those 4 trees.
Yep.
And I have another note that she may have mentioned planting of shrubs, and the previous owner didn't do the shrub planting that they were supposed to do.
It was such an elaborate plan. I'm going to share that plan with you. Let's see which one it is. I thought I had it up, but let me just make sure I do. Maybe if I just come here.
Well, just as long as.
Here, can you, let's see. It was a pretty elaborate plan. It had a lot of shrubbery. It had a lot of planting all along the, let's see. There was, can you see the floor plan, site plan here? There was a lot of planting around essentially the entire perimeter of the property line. Every space of the property line got planting. And it's just exceptionally expensive to put it in. So my clients would like to mitigate that, do what we can, do as much shrubbery as they can afford, but not do quite the extent. I think that we still have, we're trying to keep as much to sort of the pretty parts of the house.
Just hold on. I'm sure you can read. I think Suzanne Nolan agrees that it was very extensive, and I don't think we're looking for the extensive shrubbery planting.
Yep.
That previous, but something, some compromise of something less that Suzanne can live with would be fine.
Yes, I'll work with her. May I work with her directly on this?
Yes, you may.
Okay, great. I'll do that. I'll reach out to her in the next week, and then we'll try to come up with.
The only thing of concern is the 4 trees. And
yes.
Adequate number of shrubs, not to the extent that was previously approved, but some scaled down version that's acceptable to Susan Nolan.
That would be great. Thank you.
And in the interim, because it's just there's no technical details, it's shrubbery, which I'm sure you can deal with. You can go to the ZBA for the 33 square feet additional variance and come back after that, assuming you get approved, with a scaled back shrub plan and the location of these 4 trees.
Terrific.
2 and 2. Okay.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Okay, your presentation, the graphics were quite extensive and very well done. Thank you.
This program's pretty cool to use. It beats having to show just flat plans.
I like the way you made the tree disappear and then reappear. So
Does the program have little people coming in and out?
Yeah. I can put You have no idea. I have a project in White Plains that's on a river, and I actually have the water rising in the river to show how it would flood. I have an excavator moving up and down in the in the river. It's yeah, this program it can be animated, it can show, you can do videos of it, and yeah, it's pretty extensive. Sorry?
You can have an animated dog running around.
Yes, I can definitely do that. I can put their dog in and have it run around.
The reason for the curved driveway, which in my mind, if you're coming from the south, it's harder to enter the driveway. And you mentioned there's a catch
So
basin.
the catch basin is what caused I guess it to get larger.
Yeah, okay. Because to get into the driveway coming from the south, it's a
little harder.
It's a little harder, but according to my clients, they rarely come in from that direction. This is, we're trying to make it, we could certainly soften this curve a little bit and make that a little bit. We didn't want to go, this was the original curb cut. And so if I can extend the curb cut a little bit, I would soften this edge a little, give them a little bit of a curve that they can go around that.
That may be a good idea. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any
but otherwise, the width is what it is, and the intention for doing this
Okay,
curve
we're okay.
is to maintain that.
Okay. Any other comment from the board?
No comment.
Dan?
No comments. No comments.
Mike Boo?
No comments.
Comment from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, you can go to the ZBA and come back with us with the planting plan as we work with Susan. Thank you
Excellent.
very much.
Thank
Again,
you.
Thank you
Okay.
for the great.
Good night.
Good night.
Right.
Moving to number 10, 2023-16, 202 West Clinton Avenue. I will be recusing myself. Caesar Manfredi is recused, and I'm designating Mike Smith as chairman for this application.
So Mike, just a heads up, I did have a conversation with the architect about some of the stuff yesterday. So that it shouldn't be so shocking to him.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Cyrus Mianduabi, Integral Engineering Services, 27 Main Street, Dobbs Ferry, New York, representing my clients, Stephen and Nadia Harrison of 202 West Clinton Avenue. So let me share my screen. And I was made aware that the coverage calculations were incorrect. And I was also made aware that there was some undocumented areas in the backyard that were previously unbeknownst to me or my clients. When they had originally bought the property, the MLS report had stated that there was a backyard, a rear patio, and there was a lot of invasive bamboo that they cleared, and we're just trying to, clear their land and beautify the space and create a back patio area for entertainment. I had a conversation with Ed on Monday regarding this, and I quickly broke this coverage into 3 different areas. This was the original coverage in 2006 that was approved by the board and the Village of Irvington. It was, I believe there must have been some sort of variances granted for the 115% over allowable. When my clients bought the property, there was that exterior patio that was created, which brought the coverages up to 138%. And then there was an addition of some impervious area in the rear patio, again, in an effort to create a backyard entertainment area. This is the way that the property currently looks. They've removed all of the bamboo and have installed an irrigation system, sod, and just beautifying not only their property but the neighboring properties. The bamboo was migrating over this fence onto the neighboring property, and I think they've done a fairly decent job of making a nice outdoor space. Again, they thought that the size and scale of the project that they were undertaking didn't necessarily require any building permit because of the 200 square feet of patio that they were adding. And we are requesting some relief for this project. Is there any questions I can answer?
So I know you're aware that the application needs additional information for it to proceed, and there's nothing that'll be done tonight. But what I'm interested in is, what is it that you were seeking to do, and what is it that you now learned had been undocumented?
What we were seeking to do was to basically infill where all this, that there was a bamboo circling this deck with the hot tub in it inside. What we were trying to do was to infill that area to create a place where we can have a table and chairs, because there is a backyard barbecue and wet bar in the rear. So just to create a entertainment area. That was the main goal.
And which aspects of this do you now realize are undocumented?
The light gray portions that were existing are all undocumented. The dark gray is what has been added by my clients. So, I mean, in an effort to mitigate this, we were proposing to remove some of the impervious areas on the lot to create a no net increase in impervious area. But again, we didn't realize that there was undocumented on this property.
All right. Are there any questions from the board? Laura?
So there is a hot tub or there isn't a hot tub?
Correct. There was always a hot tub on the property. But the original plans that were approved there was an indoor hot tub. And somehow now we have this exterior hot tub. Where is it? Sorry.
So you currently have an outdoor existing hot tub
Correct.
and it's not approved.
So there's a certificate of occupancy for a hot tub from 1989.
Okay, but not outside.
But not outdoors, correct. The original, sorry to make you dizzy, but the original.
Right, you don't know, I understand, I
Yeah.
got it. Okay, so then my other question is, so you were removing bamboo. And when you were removing the bamboo, were you already doing deck improvements? Because I see like a half-started job, so I'm a little confused
I
about
can
the
probably
condition.
straighten that out.
Okay,
They were just doing, Cyrus, go back to the coverage chart where you showed the dark gray area. So they were building that dark gray area and we issued a stop work order. Unbeknownst to all of us until the application came in, apparently more was undocumented.
okay,
So during our review, we found that and we wanted to make sure that we had a productive meeting. So we reached out to Cyrus last week and asked him to just let you guys understand it, because it really is a lot to take in.
yeah,
And where's the jacuzzi on this plan?
it's where it says deck on the left, I
Right.
think,
It's right there.
but they're not showing it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So is your intention to resubmit an application to formalize the pieces that you want to keep? Like, are you keeping the hot tub?
Yes, the idea is that we keep everything as much intact as possible. You know, my clients recently purchased the property. And we're making improvements and had no idea that this portion of their property didn't have a CO.
Okay, no questions right now.
Dan?
So you, basically you want to document the undocumented and the dock area is work in progress, hopefully to be documented.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Mike?
What's the crosshatch area? The circle?
Yeah.
Oh, this area?
Yeah, that area.
I'm sorry, yeah, that's a standalone patio that we're proposing to remove. Again, my initial application was a no net increase in impervious area, so the idea was that we add this area and we remove some of the other impervious on the lot. Again, to create a no net
And those
increase.
are legal areas.
Yeah.
Those were approved in the previous.
The round patio wasn't, the driveway looks pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, the driveway doesn't count as coverage. So
Yeah.
although it's a reduction of non-pervious, it's not a reduction of coverage.
This was the original approved documented site plan.
Okay, but there's no patio.
The round patio is not there.
No, but even in the back.
And the deck is not there, and the patio in between the wall and the stair is not there.
And I mean, some of this doesn't make sense. Why would you have stairs down to grass? I mean, there's certain portions of this.
You can reach out to the previous architectural or design firm.
Yeah.
They'll be on in 10 minutes.
Okay, no other questions.
I was just curious, who removed the bamboo?
My client said.
Your client said, are there certain ways in which to just remove and discard bamboo? Do you know if they did it properly?
They hired a reputable landscaper, and I believe that they did. I can look into that.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions? All right, I guess we'll see you. Do we have any comments from the public, Sarah?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Anybody from the public who's in attendance? Please identify yourself as you sweat to the microphone.
Caesar Manfredi at 358 South Buckout Street. I have one question. What's the total percentage that you're over coverage, including the undocumented and what you built?
41%.
141.
141 over.
41 over. 41% over.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
But as my understanding is they were approved for being 15% over.
Correct.
All right.
We're gonna get a neighborhood comparison next time.
Yeah. I think that'd be appropriate for coverage.
Did you talk to them about a neighborhood comparison?
No.
It's it's in there.
It's on our list.
Oh, okay.
Yes, correct.
You know-
Yeah, I did receive the James Hunt memo and I did receive the Susan Nolan landscape architect memo and I'll respond accordingly.
So you know what we need on a neighborhood comparison?
Correct.
I can give you, sorry.
All right.
Give me a call.
Any other comments, Sarah?
No.
All right. We'll see you next month.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Welcome. We welcome Mr. Manfredi back to the chair.
MS.
Yeah, the glasses disappeared. Can't see this. Number 11.
49.
Yeah, but I can't. 2023,
The 2021.
the 2021-33. It's 49 Field Terrace. How am I going to?
That's not-
How am I going to- This is a previous approval that's coming in for a change of some sort.
Hello again.
Hi, Doug.
I almost missed you calling me. I guess I'll start by sharing my screen. This is Douglas McClure. I am the architect for Sumit Mohan and Subhani Chandra at 49 Field Terrace. Which drawing are we in here? So
Doug, hold on a second. Before you start your explanation, it's unclear to us what's coming out and what's going in. So you need
yes,
to.
I will I'll clarify that right now. So and I understand I should have put a drawing that showed that in this set, but originally there was approved an addition in this location. Come on. And in this location here. And then all this driveway work and all the stormwater retention work and the landscape work, all the exterior work that was approved is no different than what I've shown on these plans. When we got pricing, I'm sure you've heard this, that everything's coming in much higher, and the client felt we needed to, they still wanted to do the driveway and they still needed to do some renovations inside, but we had to rethink the project to try and bring it in at a more cost-effective manner. So what we did was essentially take off that whole addition and just reconfigure the interior. So what we're here for is to approve removing the addition. That's the only change to the original submission.
There was another issue that Suzanne pointed out. You're currently using.
Yeah, I attached the wrong landscape drawing, which I will rectify. And also I've asked the landscaper to redo that drawing and take away the addition and show the backyard as we're showing it now. So there will be no change to the originally approved exterior work, including the landscaping. And as a matter of fact, the driveway and the tree removals have already taken place. So I'll get the correct previously approved drawing into the building department, along with one that shows previously approved landscape drawing, along with the revised one that shows the addition removed.
Okay, so you need to come back. Okay. Any questions from the board?
No question.
No questions.
No questions.
And Mike Bafuco.
No question.
Anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
All right, Doug, you know what you need to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Lastly, number 12, 2020-24. Again, this was previously approved. It's 34 Lewis Road Park. And I guess there was some changes during the construction and they're back for an additional approval for some of the changes.
Good afternoon or evening, I guess. Patty Steinsteiner, owner's rep for the project. This is 34 Lewis, which is the kind of wonderful piece of property that overlooks Halsey Pond, right along the walkway to there. We're dealing with two issues. One is to straighten out what's been done by the utility company. Kind of explain that and see what your take on it is. And the other is proposing a wall fence. If I can share my screen, you can see if I can get things working. Are you seeing anything yet?
Yes.
We see the
Yes.
site plan.
Okay, so now it looks like an actual thing with writing and all that good stuff. So
You're showing a photograph now. There you go.
yeah, so, yeah, well, that's my cover. That's my patented cover sheet, nice picture, and then we get into the other stuff. So this is the approved site plan, the plan that was approved by the planning board, I think almost 2 years ago. The project is in construction, it's almost complete. And two things have come up. One of them is the situation with with how we're getting electricity to the house. The original design, can you see my cursor moving?
Yes.
Yeah, so the original design was that this is a telephone pole that existed, that the overhead wire came from. We wanted to put the, drop at this point and come underground all the way up to the house. The utility company wouldn't do that for us because this pole is actually not on the homeowner's property. So, so close, we didn't think it'd be an issue, but there's sticklers for that. So they put in a new pole right over here with the cursor showing on the east side of the proposed driveway. The current driveway kind of comes out over the neighboring property. So the pole, moved everything down. So we've got the driveway worked out. There's really no change with that. The main thing is that this pole was added from there to the house. The electrical line is underground. The alternative we had was maintaining the existing poles. I think actually I've got a blow up of this, kind of showing what we're dealing with here. Yeah. So this is the new pole that was put in. Here's the overhead wire coming to that pole. We go underline from there. And this was the plan that we had that showed that we were taking out 1, 2, 3 poles. Those poles were all removed. So basically what the utility company gave us the choice of is having it all overhead or having the one pole. We went with the one pole. Ed, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we still have a stop work order on that. Yep. The reality is the utility company, they completed putting the pole in and the meter and everything else. We just haven't had the electricity turned on. And we are getting kind of an interesting concern with our neighbors because we continue to use the generators. So they would like to get this resolved. I think this is pretty straightforward, but I don't, speak for you guys. You tell me what you think we need to do. We're willing to add landscaping so that we would basically screen the pole and the meter. It is, I think initially there was concern that it would be visible from the path to Halsey Pond. I've got some photos that I'll show in a minute after we talk about the wall a little bit, so you can kind of have a better sense of that. But I'm thinking that if we do some clever landscaping, we can kind of make it a non-issue. I've also been reminded that I have to be careful with the landscaping because I can't put plants in front of the meter because they have to be able to get to it. But I think it's the kind of a thing that, if we went out with Suzanne there, we could come up with some good solutions. The second part of this is the desire to add a fence on a 2-foot-high stone wall running along the west property line and then turning up to create gates coming in for the driveway. If you remember, this is the property that is our survey and our deed shows the property line coming down the middle of that traveled way. This dashed dot line is the edge of the what we believe is an easement, but we don't even need to really argue any of that. We've set the wall in 5 feet past that. And the idea is to have a 2-foot-high stone wall, dry stone wall. So it's not, it wouldn't, block flow of water. This is an area that could flood. We're not trying to hold anything back. Would function as it currently does. So it wouldn't change impacts on anyone else. And then on top of the 2-foot stone wall, we would have a 4-foot wrought iron fence. I think I've got details. Yeah. So the idea is the dry stone wall, the 4-foot fence on top, 2 piers flanking the entrance coming in. One thing that came up tonight was that the client apparently, they're intending this to be a fence that it allows them to have their free-range pets running in the yard. So apparently the idea is to continue this fence or continue a fence along what would be the south property line. Discussion was, well, that could just be chain link. I would think that if there's any frontage here that we want to protect the appearance of, it would include that south line because that's where you walk along when you're at Halsey Pond. So my recommendation to them is that they would stop the stone wall at that point and go north, go to the west, or no, go to the east with just a 6-foot wrought iron fence at that point. I need to discuss that with the client. We're obviously going to need to revise this for it, but I wanted to discuss it tonight so that I could get any feedback you've got and understand better what concerns might be so that we can make sure that we're addressing all of them. We have Doug and Suzanne's comments. I think they're all pretty straightforward. This is our landscaping plan that was approved. As you can see in this, we're going to need an adjustment on that. Obviously, we're not going to reduce the number because there's a real commitment here to having that very heavily landscaped, but they're going to need to separate some of the stuff so that the wall can just pass through. This was showing a fence in our landscaping plan. It showed a fence on that line that's at the edge of the easement. I'm thinking because of everything, it's going to be better if we move that 5 foot in, but I'd be interested about, what how the board feels about that. Here are just some photos so you can get kind of a sense of it. This upper left, this is the telephone pole that we hoped to drop from. I should have realized if it's on the other side of the fence, it probably wasn't on our property. This is that traveled way that goes up to Lewis Road. That's actually owned by the applicant in addition to their main property. This photo here shows the new pole that was put in with the meter. The driveway is going to come out and kind of come straight here. It doesn't need to flare up this way. So we've got room here that we could do some pretty nice landscaping and block that out if people are walking on the traveled way or anything else. Here on these lower 2 photos, I'm standing on the walkway to Halsey Pond. So you're looking across. Obviously this is unfortunate. The karting thing is in the way, but you can see how far away it is here. A little further up, you see it. Again, if there's landscaping there, I think it becomes a non-issue. This is just some photos walking towards Halsey Pond. So you can see the area that we'd be putting that wall into. We're assuming that this wood fence that was to keep people from coming through and dropping trees and stuff on the property. This is, I think, on the edge of the traveled way or, the easement. So we'd be about 5 feet inside of that. Most of the area is pretty clear. We don't hit any major trees or, if we are coming close, we can kind of maybe do a loop around it. So at this point, we've come all the way to the end, this bottom right. This is with my back to Halsey Pond, kind of looking where the trees come. This was where we'd come along and probably turn to the east with just the 6-foot fence. Here's turning around and then walking back. So you can kind of get a sense of the space that we do have there for this wall. I don't think it'll be tough to get that to work. The other thing I did notice, I added this to the presentation. It was comments about, the conservation buffer agreement. We gave a conservation buffer agreement to the village that was filed. I believe Ed can confirm that because I know that was a concern he had. He wanted to make sure he had everything done right. And I think it has been. Say again? It took a little while. It took
Was it filed?
Filed, and we got a receipt finally.
Okay.
Oh, it was filed. We just never got a receipt.
Right. It was, I mean, if I wasn't as generous as I am, I'd actually suggest that it wasn't on our side that it failed, because we gave them everything. We needed something signed by the village, and that just didn't come through right. So I did, Ed informed me about it this about a year ago, and I did get the forms, brought them over, got everything signed, and got everything filed. So I think we're in good shape. The main question is, given the conservation buffer, are we allowed to have a fence or wall in it? Section 3.4 and 3.5 addresses this. The 3.4 says, you're very limited on what you can do with any construction, but 3.5 does make it clear the fences and site walls, such as stone walls that are normal and customary in the immediate vicinity, may be erected, repaired, or replaced on the conservation buffer property, subject to approval by the Irvington Planning Board and/or the Architectural Review Board, when so required by the Irvington Village Code. So I think that's everything that I've got, and I know you're tired, but if you've got any questions or suggestions, Sam Fertig is also on. Sam is the contractor. He is Carbon. I didn't know it was an option, but he's made it very clear that he is Carbon. I think I am too, probably. So, so any questions that you've got or suggestions?
Patty, I just want to point out one thing too. On the kind of south edge of the property, there's an existing chain link fence that's like very old that runs down almost to the corner there.
Yep.
So anything that we do there, I think, is an added benefit, that it's looking better than what's currently existing versus what's there.
Yep. And one other thing I want to point in, we have put some planting in. I think some of the board members are aware of the circumstances for that. That planting was a concession that we did to try and make it look a little bit less raw while we were in construction. We have not yet done any of the real landscaping. So the goal is to integrate getting the wall in with the landscaping so that we're not, putting something in the wrong place and causing a problem.
Okay, well, before I get into the two proposals you have, that picture on the upper right that you're showing on, you got 4 pictures up there, the one on the upper right.
Yep.
The grading with the real erosion, that's not the final grading, is it?
It's not.
I think that's a construction drive to be able to get in and out. It's a big site, but it's still a complicated one to work on.
Caesar, if I can just add to that, we need to get concrete into the back for the deck footings, and we had to get machinery back there for all the stormwater equipment and erosion control. And so they built that up to let it be passable by, machine without it being kind of dangerous on the slope. And it's all going to get pulled back once our well and everything else is done. So the final grading will be much more gradual than what's shown there.
Yeah, when you showed your site plan, the contours do not, the approved contours don't match what I'm looking at. So, okay, that was a good explanation.
Yeah, it's really just for access and safety's sake. And that's why partially why we haven't done any planting, is that we know that, we don't want to damage anything, right? If I'm putting, plants in the ground, I want to make sure that they're going to live. But also knowing that the homeowner is interested in doing a wall and a fence, and knowing that we'd have this conversation at some point, it was, I think, important to me to make sure that we figured all that out before we start doing anything that we would have to damage or undo, essentially. So.
Okay, now getting to the poles. Is there a reason from the existing pole across the street to what is the location of the new pole?
Yes.
You're proposing, or not proposing, it's there already.
Yep.
It's overhead.
Yes.
If that were underground, you wouldn't need a pole, is that correct? And the box would be less intrusive, is that not correct?
No, that's not exactly the case. The issue is twofold. There was an existing overhead service in which Con Ed did not want to discontinue using, because the other pole was not, there was not enough space with the existing stormwater drainage and everything else, and the bends required to go underground from that pole. Plus it's on the other property, which would require them to do something that's above my pay grade. And so the new pole is at the maximum distance that they allow from pole to pole, essentially, for the overhead service. And the original pole, if you look at the top right picture that Patty's showing, would have been right left of the Chevy pickup truck that's there, which would inevitably be in the middle of the new driveway. And so this pole was the farthest place they could put it that would not be in the driveway and would not be affecting anyone else's property. And obviously, when they looked at it, they were trying to put it as far away from the visible area of the street or the walking pond or the walking path or anything like that. You know, they have the right to put the meter box, which is what's shown there. It's just the meter box. There's no disconnect or anything else on their pole. And so that's what's there, right? All of our equipment is in the basement of the house and completely, you know, invisible, essentially.
Well, I can't believe that if you were underground from the existing pole to where the new pole is, that you would need a 30-foot pole when you're underground.
No, I understand that, but they wouldn't go underground because there's existing stormwater drainage that they can't get around. The number of bends that would be required would not work.
That whole stormwater situation is a pretty interesting one too, Caesar. We're still trying to unravel that one.
And I'm currently in the process of bringing in a private company to clean out the storm drains that are at the road, but as well as clean out the line that's under the village property as per Ed and my discussion. So I'm going to pay to clean out the entire line out to Halsey Pond that's running under the village right of way of the walkway, to basically, you know, in good faith, make sure that everything there is working as well as it could be. And if there's an issue, then we can come back and discuss it. But the storm drainage in that cul-de-sac is a maze and a crisscross. And so there's no easy way to go underground from the existing pole to a new pole, because it would still need a pole for the connection. They couldn't go underground, and they didn't have the ability to go underground on the other pole. I think it was potentially undersized, is my understanding, to have the silo and the riser there. But again, I'm not Con Ed, so I don't know that.
Yeah, and we wouldn't have wanted to leave that other pole in place anyway, because that one is very visible. I think getting rid of the poles that we had on the property and getting rid of the overhead wire for the extent that we did is real improvement. What's nice is the wires are coming to this, you don't see them because it's kind of all in the tree foliage. Of course, that probably means in the first storm, we're going to lose power, but that's something else. So I think this is the best solution for it. The negative is the unsightliness of the pole, which of course at this point is totally on display. I think if we create a nice planting array that blocks that, I mean, again, I'm going to use my cursor. I can see material that's about this high that would be out in front of this. We have to maintain a accessibility, but that could actually be behind a row of substantial trees. I don't know if any of you have gotten up to see what we did.
Okay, thank you. Ed, the original approval, I don't remember. Was it all?
The original approval was underground all the way across the street to the existing pole. And that's why the stop work order was issued, because they didn't follow.
So what's he talking about? The poles that were planned?
They were supposed to connect to the pole behind the silver SUV.
Yeah.
Is what they applied for.
So there were no poles between that pole.
I'm not sure if there
house.
was or wasn't existing poles. The proposed plan said that they were going to connect to that pole all underground.
Right.
When we found the pole there, we hit this problem before. They were honest and said it's permanent. The last one said it was temporary, and it became permanent.
So the argument, Patty, that this single pole is better than the three hypothetical poles
that also weren't approved.
That also weren't approved, doesn't exist.
No, that was existing poles. There was an existing pole on the next.
It wasn't planned to use them, so this is not an improvement. If it was, the original approved plan was to go all the way from that existing pole to the north, underground. This new single pole is not replacing something you were going to use. you were not going to use those poles. So this is not an improvement of, gee, we don't have to use those 3 poles. We're going to use this single one that's new. So that argument, don't push that one. That doesn't work.
I understand what you're saying, but again, I mean, obviously, go ahead.
Patty, let me.
Sure.
If you're going to justify going overhead, and I looked at the overhead, and you're absolutely correct. You practically have to weave the wire through the trees to get from the existing pole to the now new pole. And if there's a stormwater pipe problem, you really should make that presentation that it's impossible or near impossible without going zigzag or whatever you need to do to avoid existing drainage to justify the new pole. And I wouldn't mention, well, you can mention them all you want, but it's out of my mind about those other poles that you say are not going to be used because they weren't supposed to be in the first place.
Yeah, I wasn't meaning it was an improvement over what was approved. Obviously, we wanted this to be as non-apparent as possible using the pole that's on the neighbor's property. I just assumed the utility company could do that. And they basically said that they couldn't. You know, complications in several different ways. I think this location, you know, I think they could have left the existing pole. It still would have meant that we had to come back to you. But I think the fact that we got them to move the pole kind of up into the other trees, I think was an improvement to leaving the existing pole and trying to work with that, which of course would have been a less expensive option. It just also would have been very unsightly for the homeowner coming in and seeing that pole. I think they're as interested in screening this out as anyone else here in the board.
You know, as I drive around the village and I look at houses, it truly upsets me when you see these beautiful homes and then there's that in the front of it.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous. And we're sitting here and we're going to approve something that I abhor as I drive around.
On Main Street, yeah.
And you're really going to need to come up with a justification to do the overhead from the existing pole to what's there now. And you know, you may be right about the storm drains. Maybe you can't get underground from the existing to where you want to put the meter. And with the meter, if it was underground from the existing to that location, because it appears they have to be at that location, would the meter box be as big and as obtrusive as that?
It's the same box, it's just the pole wouldn't be that tall.
How would it be the same distance off the ground?
Yeah.
No, so the only thing that changes is you cut the pole a little shorter and the box is still there.
Yeah.
I don't know what the improvement is if the box is the issue and to go underground and the box is still there.
Well, the box on the other pole would have been behind the neighbor's fence. Maybe that's the first thing that should have given me a clue that wasn't a good solution.
No, that's not true, Patty. There was no proposed box in your plan. What was there was a wire that ran from the pole to the house with the meter on the side of the house.
Right.
That's what was.
And we were fine with that. Con Ed.
Was a brand new issue, and it should have been addressed either at the board or before the board before you installed it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that you're not right. Obviously, that's true. The first time I knew that this was happening, it was installed. Nobody.
Yeah. So it's Sam's fault.
No, I think it's
Ed.
It's Con Ed's fault. I know. We're gonna blame Con Ed.
Yeah, it's got Ed in the name, but it's Con Ed's fault. Don't worry.
They don't care what we have to say, and they did what they wanted to do, and I think they had a good point. I mean, when I went out today just to kind of take these photos, Sam had told me about the issue with what was in the ground, and you can kind of see right here. There's like a catch basin there. There's one on the other side of the street. If you try to get through here anywhere, you're going to be hitting a pipe somewhere. The pipes run. When you look at it's one of the reasons we haven't been able.
The other issue, Patty, and that I want to point out is where the transformer is located and the distance from the transformer to the house is part of the issue. So that's part of why they wanted to go overhead, get to the meter and go to their secondary service. Like there was no I think, I'm not saying that that's a guarantee, but like that was my understanding through the electrician is like, they said we've got 100 feet overhead maximum that we can go from this pole. We can't use this pole for underground. They wouldn't obviously be able to service the meter on the other property because it's behind the fence on someone else's property. And so then it became, they said we need to put a pole here and then you can go underground.
But they're taking this overhead wire to the pole on the private property or from another pole?
They're taking it from the existing pole on the other person's property that was an existing overhead wire that they brought to our new pole.
Now, you mentioned something overhead 100 feet I mean, I didn't dwell on it, but is that new pole 100 feet from the other pole or less?
Correct. It is the absolute maximum distance to get it as far away and into our property as possible so that it wasn't any closer to the street or the walkway than it needed to be.
And I think that probably is like, if you look at this lower left hand and I say cars are maybe 16 feet or something, if you started lining up cars along here, I think you get at least 6 cars, 7 cars before you hit that other pole. So that seems like
you're going to need to justify because there is none other than it's there. We had to do it, but you need to explain why you had to do it, why you couldn't go underground, and please leave out the other existing poles that had nothing to do with your explanation. That was excuse the expression, that was smokescreen, red herring. And I do know the origin of the word red herring.
As do I. It was not intended to just, I just was trying to say that what would have been the unfortunate to me is if somebody said, well, let's just run the power lines overhead. We obviously would have had to come back anyway, but that would have been a less good solution than I think where we're at now. I think
maybe some documentation from Con Edison, Patty.
Yeah.
Because you're saying they'll only give you 100 feet of overhead wire. But we have houses that have all underground this far.
Because it was an existing overhead wire they wanted to reuse.
No, but understand my conversation. What regulation said they has to go overhead for 100 feet?
No, they said a maximum of 100 feet overhead.
Right. So they'll give you a maximum, but if you pay for the trench to go all the way over there, would they do it? Because that's my question to you.
No, they said they would use
or if the meter box was required or not. We're gonna need documentation from Con Edison.
Okay.
And not saying that they give you 100 feet because that's an easy conversation to have. I have that documentation. The documentation we're looking for says they won't do an underground for 100 feet or for 300 feet of whatever the house surface is.
Well, you need the justification that you can't do underground because of existing.
We haven't provided that yet.
You haven't provided.
So we will provide that. I mean, there's no issue here with anybody, and I think Ed.
Patty, that's enough. Let me hold the board here. Lori.
I'm hearing a little frustration between Caesar and Ed Marin that this situation was not brought to light when you might have known about it from Con Ed. And I personally would be surprised that you wouldn't know that the pole was being installed. So while I can't imagine the homeowner likes this pole any more than anybody else, and that this will likely be the situation that needs to remain, I think some of the frustration might have been resolved had you come earlier with the situation.
Yeah,
I would agree with Ed that some type of documentation verifying the fact that the trench was not being allowed, that only the pole was being utilized. And it seems to me a little very last minute that we were informed, much less you as the builder or the developer as well.
Yeah, it's going to be something that we're going to be stuck with visually forever. And it seems like it was not thought out and just put it there. Don't worry about it. And with no thought whatsoever. And that's not right. I mean, if it's truly the only option, then you need to document it, because as opposed to, Con Ed came and nobody was around, they stuck the pole in and they didn't give a damn and what it looked like, because that's what Con Ed does. So, yeah, we're stuck with this, and I just want to make sure we're not stuck with something that could have been avoided because no thought went into it in the first place. At least from my point of view, no thought went into it, because if any thought went into it, and if there was an alternative, it would have happened. Mike Smith?
So I have a couple of questions. So first, my understanding is the only overhead wire is the one between the existing pole on the neighbor's property to the new pole that was installed by Con Ed. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. And from the new pole installed by Con Ed, it's now underground to the house. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And how far off the ground is the box, roughly?
3 feet to the bottom, roughly.
Yep, 5 feet to the viewing, where they can read the information.
Okay. And Patty, what I understood you to say is you had assumed that the wire could be brought underground from the existing pole, but you were told at some point along the way by Con Ed that they wouldn't be able to do that. Is that right?
Not quite. I was assuming that that's what was going to be installed. The first time I knew that's not what was going to be installed is when I saw the pole in and the meter box being installed. I found out about it more because I found out that we had to stop.
So what I'm trying to understand is, and perhaps what is maybe a fuller explanation of what the communications were with Con Ed as to the expectation that this would be underground, and then them installing the pole. I think that would also help. But here's my other question. There was an old house there to begin with.
Yep.
And how did that house get serviced with electricity?
There was a pole that was next to the top right picture that's shown here, right there.
Right here.
And then during.
And another one, yeah, and there were actually 3 poles coming up here, and then they came up the hill to the house. It was all overhead.
So there were 3 poles that you ultimately took down, right, as part of this. Overhead wires, right?
Yep.
Right. So what was already existing there for, I don't know how old that whole house was, but I know it was old.
Yep.
That house already had 3 poles with overhead wires near Halsey Pond, right?
That's right.
So I know that, as I'm sitting here and I walked in, I was saying, well, the plan was first approved with it being an underground wire. But I don't know why I'm standing on ceremony. I understand why we might want an explanation as to why we can't have the underground wire, but I don't know why I'm standing on ceremony about having an overhead wire across this road, which everybody knows that, what the water thing is there, but why I'm worried about having an overhead wire between 2 poles when there are always poles with overhead wires on that property. I just don't get it.
Okay.
So, I might have originally preferred having it underground, and I'm sure that for servicing reasons, for weather reasons, the owner would prefer having it underground.
Yep.
I don't think aesthetically it bothers me that much, because before it was there anyway.
If the box was done, I suppose.
But the box wasn't. I get it. So you could
This is
come
why I was
around the
proposing to screen the box in a way that makes sense.
cell phone towers have all this decoration on it that it makes you look like a tree. So
The more I look at it, the darn thing is not even plumb. It looks like something thrown up temporary.
well, that's something else.
No, it is plumb. It's just the perspective of the picture.
All right.
Mike Bufuco.
The box that's there now, where was that originally going to be? Or
On the house.
on the house?
Yeah.
So why does it have to be there?
Con Ed will not let us have box. This is a whole new thing with Con Ed. They will not allow having a line that is not accessible to them, that is we have to put this here where it drops into the ground. They won't do it underground and then get to the meter.
They don't want their primary line buried under a driveway.
Sorry, that's completely unrelated to the drainage pipe issue.
Yeah.
Well,
So when, so this was not something that was Con Ed's policy when this application was originally approved?
Con Ed's policy has changed, and their ability to document their changes and regulations is very haphazard, we'll use the word.
Yeah, I don't know.
Probably more, I can speak to that. It's probably more about the meter or the meter location than it is the wiring and the wiring underground. That's why I asked for the documentation from Con Ed for the overhead wire.
Plus, I think at the time of approval, we never had any weigh-in from Con
Well,
Ed.
we didn't need weigh-in because
I know.
doing a beautiful job.
So we
hiding it.
didn't know what
The
the,
reason I ask is, it seems like the bigger issue is the
So,
box, right? And so if the box being there isn't necessarily completely related to the underground piping, because it sounds like it would has to be closer to something. I don't know what their access rules are, but it couldn't have been on the house anyway.
Right.
So those are two separate.
It should have been on the house, but yeah, the house is too far away from the street.
Right.
Maybe the designers should have, or the site planner should have known that.
So it sounds like we need
Changed
that if we can.
Yeah, Patty, that's a good point Mike Bufuco just made, that you need to document that why it's not on the house, and that should be easy.
That's easier than documenting the overhead portion.
Yeah, and then document the overhead because of the storm and the 100 feet, that it has to be a maximum of 100 feet. So you got a couple, and I don't know if you could move the driveway. I guess you said you're gonna move the driveway a little bit to a 5-foot clearance to the foliage.
We're gonna give probably up close to 10 to 15 feet and be able to plant all this in and still be able to walk behind the trees to get to it without anything in the way. So kind of, we have to comply with their clearance requirements. So our goal is to have enough stuff out in front of this. You won't see any of it. And this will be a nice entrance coming.
You got some work to do.
We haven't talked about the fence yet.
I'm getting to it.
Yeah, let's go.
Now we're off the electric service. We're into the fence.
Yep.
Understand what you said. Is there a reason you picked the, I assume it's not wrought iron. Is it aluminum that looks like wrought iron? Yeah.
I mean, Sam, have you come up with what you're actually gonna, because
we were going for like a very simple aluminum, either square tube or rod round fence that was going to be black aluminum running through, so that it was as innocuous as possible.
some of them look nice, some of them look not so nice. They're the ones that are so easy to install actually work like hinged, so you can put them in any way you want. I'm picturing this as something more substantial.
Let me poll the board on the. I don't think the stone wall is an issue, but the type of fence might.
Yeah.
Deserve attention.
So there was always a wall in this plan
No.
that was originally,
There was always a fence.
there was a fence, there wasn't always. And what was the originally approved fence?
I don't think we had an originally approved fence. The landscaping plan included a fence. But that was never substantiated in any, it's not on our drawings. We weren't sure what people were going to want to do in the future. So we didn't show a fence on our site plan. The client has obviously said they really feel the need for a fence. I don't blame them now that I realize better how much traffic actually is on Halsey Pond.
So the reason for the fence is to kind of enclose their property, and you mentioned something about animals or pets.
Correct.
And to protect the conservation easement.
Correct.
We've had a few incidences that weren't their fault, where the
People go
conservation
beyond.
easement was damaged because it's not delineated.
Okay.
My experience from being on site, obviously a lot, is that people think that part of the Devon's property is part of Halsey Pond. And so they tend to traipse through there without realizing which was part of why Ed suggested that we put up this wood snow fence to kind of start to almost train people that, this is a separate area. It's someone's property.
Got it. Okay.
They were not, Lori, they were not respecting the orange construction fence. People apparently felt that was in their way, so they just took it down. The wood fence is a little bit more like, we really put this up, please don't knock it down.
Okay.
So that is also.
So, I mean, part of it's a little hard to imagine the fence when we're not seeing it with the landscaping yet, right? Because I think that's.
Yeah, you submitted a lot of pictures with the landscaping, which was a lot of graphic. And maybe if you added to those pictures that exist, a representation of your work. I don't imagine, given your expertise at producing those graphics, I don't imagine that it would be that difficult to.
Not at all. Certainly do that and get.
This would satisfy, other than that little detail on the plans, which is very difficult to visualize it, 200 feet of it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the more natural, the better. And the stone certainly feels more natural. It's hard for me to imagine what the actual metal what the impact of the metal on top of that would be. So more visual would be helpful.
Yeah, the other thing I can do is we can take some pictures of when I think of that combination, there are a lot of really nice fences along Broadway and throughout the river towns that they've done that exact thing, a nice stone base and then a very good looking, wrought iron rail on top that, seems substantial and stately.
Patty, when you drive up Park and you stop at the stop sign at Palisar, there's a stone wall and scalloped wood picket fence on top of the stone wall.
Yeah, my concern with the wood is maintenance on it.
Okay. I'm just saying, in terms of what it might look like.
At the same location, when you drive up Park and you get to that corner, there's 2 telephone poles that look like crap with wires hanging down and right in the visible corner. So, it's we're trying to make it look nice.
Yes, we appreciate that.
I
So you
have
to
no
look at it
doubt.
too.
I'm sure this is a substantial investment for the homeowner and they want it to look like a beautiful finished product.
Correct.
So I doubt, and I think you have to also it has to work with the style of the house. So I'd love to see some more visuals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am in favor of a stone and a fence above it. But a visual certainly would give us a better idea of how it looks and how it blends into the area.
And I think a solid fence would be not, I'm glad you're using a fence that with spaces in between the rails. Otherwise, you'd get a tunnel effect.
I think our intent is for the landscape.
And you're walking through a Grand Central Terminal to
Yeah. One of the tunnels under Grand Central. That's not what we want for Halsey Pond.
I think the intent is to let the landscape take over the fence, essentially.
Yes, yeah. Mike Smith?
So Patty, clarify something for me. Is the proposed fence in the conservation buffer?
Yes.
And you have a 15-foot right of way for the village. And the buffer is 30 feet, right?
Well, the right of way is 30 feet wide with the property line separating the 2 parcels on either side running down the middle. And what we've done is I'm showing that where the wall and fence are an additional 5 feet past the edge of that. If you guys felt more comfortable, it'll be, obviously we can bring it up right, close, maybe 1.5 feet off the line, but I'd want to have the surveyor out there and stake it. I don't want to risk getting it, where we're all of a sudden we're encroaching in the easement or something.
So half correct, Patty. Their survey shows that they own to the center of the roadway.
Right.
Survey for Caduzzi shows that they own 15 feet from the center of the roadway. The town of Greenberg boundaries show that their property line is 15 feet from the center of the road. To avoid further dispute in the past, they've acknowledged that the 15 feet is either not theirs or an easement without having to go find it, because it's not,
So 15
it's not
feet from
relatively
where?
easy to find.
So
So 15 feet from the center of the roadway. They believe is theirs, we believe it's not.
And we're not
So
just,
we're not disputing it, but it hasn't been defined.
How about this? Where does the conservation buffer start?
Technically, the center of the road.
Is that what that's what the buffer starts?
So
Okay,
it shows on the approved plan.
okay, so the conservation buffer is 30 feet from the center of meaning the walkway, when you say the
40.
road.
40, Patty? 40
It's a
feet.
40-foot conservation.
yeah,
so
it's for conservation from the property line.
Okay, so 40 feet from the center of the roadway,
Mhm.
right? And so where in that buffer is the proposed wall?
20 feet from the center of the roadway.
Got it. Okay,
Correct.
5 feet from the perceived property line.
I got it. Okay, okay.
And he can go closer, he should go closer.
I understand. So the easement says that the fences need to be in a, forget the language, customary, normal and customary in the vicinity.
Yeah, normal and customary in the immediate vicinity. I don't know what that means, but I think it means that we have to do something that's really good.
Well, immediate vicinity would be.
Chain link fence on the property.
What?
It would be
Chain link fence and disrepair on the property. So I don't think we want to go with that.
Yeah. I'll bring some images from around that area in Irvington.
Okay.
It's clear that
There are a few walls, and that's all.
Okay, so then finally, on the letter to us, it said that the desire of the property owner to proceed with the construction of the stone wall and fence that was discussed during the review of the approved site plan,
Yep,
but not included in the final permitted scope of work.
correct.
So I wasn't on the board at the time. Was this particular idea of a fence, stone wall and fence, is that what was discussed, or was it something else that was discussed during the review of the approved site plan?
I think it was just a fence to be designed later.
Okay, because it says with the construction of the stone wall and fence. The letter says
Right.
proceed with. So,
I always assumed that would be the appropriate way to do it. We were trying to figure out where we were going with certain things, so it would just seem better to not lock it in, knowing that we would have to, I think that's where that additional phrase came in. We're subject to approval by the Irvington Planning Board. It was clear that we might be allowed to do it, but not until we've gotten the go-ahead from you guys.
Mike, I don't think the language fences and site walls was meant to say both in combination. You can either put a fence up, or you can put a wall, or you can put both.
Doesn't say war, it says end.
no, but it also said, whatever you choose, it has to be normal and customary.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether, a stone wall might be customary and a metal fence might be customary, but a metal fence on top of a stone wall may not be customary. So I'm not the one who wrote it.
Right, but there is a stone wall and a wood fence that's customary in the neighborhood.
It could be. I'm trying to
Customary.
understand what was discussed originally that wasn't included in the final scope of work, because
I remember a discussion of a wall, and I remember discussion of a fence, I don't remember if they were on top of each other.
Right. No.
Because we would never put wall where fences is, unless there was a discussion.
And-
It's just, we wouldn't have done that.
No.
and so why wasn't it included in the final permitted scope of work?
Doesn't,
Yeah.
Didn't
Just like.
It came up that there may be.
It's like
so they
the
put
three
it
lot,
there.
the 3-lot subdivision doesn't have a detailed, there is
Just says if
recognition.
they want a fence, they gotta come back here.
Yeah,
That's all.
The
it
three-
says.
Okay.
Across the way.
No, it was, they were leaving it open as opposed to there having been a decision made, which they're now trying to retrade,
Right.
right?
But I don't think that's so uncommon.
I'm not saying no.
What you're doing when you're designing a home, that's one of the last pieces.
I'm not saying no, I just was
Right.
exploring before.
When we did the 3-lot sub Gaduzzi property, it was recognized there would be a fence, but we did not specify what kind of fence.
Right.
We left that for approval when the house came in.
Mhm.
And I think we did the same thing here, that
Okay.
we recognize there's going to be a fence, but we don't have to dwell on the design of the fence when we're designing a house.
Right.
Mike B?
I'm a big fan of the wrought iron stone wall fences that you mentioned earlier on Broadway. I think it's gonna look great, so I actually have no problem.
You know, in order to, maybe you could put a couple of stakes, you said you're gonna do a survey, Patty, did I hear you correct?
Well, yeah, how close, Sam, how close are we to where we could, I guess you got to get the deck on.
No, we could do this fence at any point in time now, and we could certainly get
No,
it
but-
surveyed and staked at any point in time also.
Okay,
If you could get a couple of stakes with a yellow flag on it, to give us an idea of where the location would be in reality as opposed to on a set of plans. You think you could do that?
yeah, definitely. Ed, did I hear you right that you think we should be a little closer to the line?
Yeah, a foot would be a foot off the 15-foot line.
Okay,
It has pluses and minuses both ways. The 5 feet gives them maintenance on their property. The 1 foot gives them the footing at least on their property.
right.
Okay.
You know, you take the good with the bad.
I think we need to see what it actually looks like when you're walking down the path. So I think a couple of stakes with some yellow ribbon on it, or
Yeah, let me just make sure one thing is being considered, because I don't want to be accused of not doing it right. I'm assuming we want to have landscaping on both sides of the fence. And I'm assuming that you don't want the village to have the responsibility of any landscaping. So I was thinking that if I had a buffer space, maybe it only needs to be 3 feet, but I think we want to have something that we can put landscaping in along the wall without it being a responsibility of the municipality.
Or right now you have grass in front of the snow fence.
Mhm.
Grass is something that would be maintained, is easily maintainable versus.
Yep.
What,
Or
are they
plantings.
tall grasses? You don't.
No, just grass.
Grass.
It's there now. Might be more sensible because you can't border on the other side of the wall, Patty.
Yep.
You can't maintaining it, manicuring it, pruning it, mulching it every year. It might not be as advantageous as you think.
Yeah,
Screening-
I'm just waiting for the phone call that you call me that the guy who maintains the landscape just drove down the road to Halsey. It's my
No, we won't be parking if we put a wall up, we won't be parking excavators there anymore.
Yeah.
We won't be dropping rocks with a little logs with a loader and brush either. And these are some of the things that, that's why strongly delineating the conservation easement is very important, because new employees, old employees just don't realize it's not village property.
Yep.
Residents don't realize it's private property. So getting something substantial would be advantageous to protect the conservation.
Okay, very good, Patty.
Cool.
I think the graphic with the fence, I think the stakes where the fence might be.
Yeah.
I didn't start out liking the metal fence, but I'm all for it now.
And then the real documentation from Con Ed on the other situation.
Yeah,
And maybe a Photoshop design of the plantings you're planting in front of.
Yeah.
The box, maybe call Christine Broder, we like that program a lot.
Well, you did wonderful graphics for the planting,
Yeah.
for the original house, so you could
I-
continue it.
Yeah, I've never seen as good trees though as he had. Usually when I'm moving the cursor, the trees are flattening out and then they have to revegetate. His were really convincing looking trees.
You were online when that presentation, Tree Circle was on.
Yep.
They made your graphics look a little antiquated.
That's not surprising. I'm a little antiquated. It seems like the only reason we can do that is I've got people in their 20s in the office. Otherwise, I would have no clue. And they come in and all of a sudden flying
It's
around.
10:30 or almost 10:30. You got your homework to do. And we got to ask the public if there's any comments.
Nobody's raising their hand to speak and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay. Any other further questions?
I do have a question.
Oh.
Did they have to give notice to?
Yeah.
I noticed.
We noticed everybody. I put the sign up and that's when we put that sign up on Horsley Pond, I think we're telling half the village what's going on.
And 200 feet from property.
I usually cheat that though, Ed.
Okay.
I usually go 250 just because I don't want to be having to tell me that I missed one.
Yeah, but now you're spending $12 too much on notices.
Yeah, I never paid first anyway, so I'm not hurting anybody.
Ed will bill you, don't worry.
Mike wants to get home and watch the second half of the basketball game. So we're done.
Plan. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
The June 7th meeting of the planning board is closed.